All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is published in the local paper and also posted in the lobby of this building. We are being broadcast live on Channel 34 and streamed live on montclair.tv. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that we have powers and procedures resembling a court of law, and we are obligated to make objective determinations of fact and draw conclusions from them in order to provide a basis for official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board can legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. First thing on our agenda this evening is the roll call.
Chair Wynn?
Here.
Vice Chair Brodoff?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Councilor Schlager?
Here.
Ms. Willis? Here. Mr. Rooney?
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally?
Here.
Ms. Lockman?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
And Mr. Gilmer?
Here.
We got a full house.
Full house. And at the beginning of summer.
Right.
So last time for a few months. All right. We have minutes from our April 29th meeting.
I haven't received any comments on the April 29th minutes. Yay. Motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
May 6th meeting.
I did receive some comments from on the May 6th minutes. I did make a mistake in the discussions for application 2566 and 2582. I transposed them, which is why it doesn't make any sense. So I'll have to reverse the discussions that are for each of those applications. And I did get a request under the discussion of Lackawanna Plaza, the resolution, to explain.
Janice, but
Yeah.
just in that reversal,
Yeah,
I don't even think the statement is correct.
which one?
The one that's under 37 Orange Road, because you can't be
The chair announced that the applicant has requested that it be carried
to the May 6th meeting, because that is the May 6th meeting.
Probably is the first meeting in June.
Something about that seemed wrong.
That's the 59 Orange Road. Okay. So I'll correct the date too.
Then it's with that, the top of that page says the minutes of April 8th.
Okay, you're right. I did these fairly quickly. Okay. So I'll make those changes, and I did have a request to explain under the section on resolution for 2543, which is Lackawanna, that members Lockman, Schwartz, and Barr, and Schlager all abstained, and therefore did not participate in the vote. Actually, Mr. Barr wasn't here for the vote anyway. So I can make the.
I just thought you should add that because they're listed as attendees, and
Right.
you should say why they didn't vote.
Sure, I'll add that comment. Any other changes to the minutes from May 6th?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
All right. We had an application on Adaline Master Property, LLC, that the applicant has requested to be carried to the June 10th meeting.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that brings us to the application of Shilling Cho. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Oh. Was I close? Choi. 123 Watchung Avenue.
Just before we get into this, what is the next meeting date? What is there, an interim date?
Oh, no, there's a meeting it's June 10th.
That's the next date.
Yeah, it's the next date.
Right. Counselor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Owen. I represent the applicant, Dylan Choi, LLC. First of all, have you pre-marked any exhibits?
Yes, I have. A1 is the application. A2 is the certification of taxes paid. A3 is the proof of publication. A4 is the affidavit of service. A5 is the site plan prepared by Paul Sionis Architecture, dated March 7th, 2019, revised May 6th, 2019. A6 is the report from Suburban Consulting Engineers, dated March 7th, 2019. A7 is the report from the Historic Preservation Commission, dated March 28th, 2019. And A8 is the report from the Planning Department, dated May 10th, 2019.
Mr. Owen, is your microphone on?
Thank you. Is it on?
Is the green light on?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
I'm the wrong one to ask whether the sound's working.
It's recording, I can see.
Perfect.
Okay. I'll give an overview. This application concerns the property 123 Watchung Avenue, Bluestone Coffee and Reliable Cleaners on the first floor of the two-story building, 4 residential apartments on the second floor of the building, and 10 on-site parking spaces. The application presents what I'll call a package of improvements for the property and the building. And these improvements are mostly at the rear of the property where it joins the municipal parking lot. The improvements include restoration of the wood staircase enclosure at the rear of the building, installation of a makeup air vent at the rear of the building, installation of solar panels on the roof of the building below the level of the roof parapet, so they're behind the parapet, for solar generated electricity, which by legislation, as you may know, had been an inherently beneficial use in the state of New Jersey for the last 10 years. Installation of a carport over existing on-site parking spaces at the rear of the building with solar panels on the carport roof for, again, solar generated electricity, reconfiguration and improvement of parking spaces along the rear property line, tandem or stacked parking spaces along the east property line, but we're maintaining a total still of 10 on-site parking spaces. We're not losing any new trash and recycling enclosures, and stripping and repainting of both the front of the building and the back of the building at the request of the HPC to do both the front and the back. So the project requires site plan approval and several variances. They're almost all related to setbacks. It's been reviewed by the Planning Department, the Development Review Committee, and the HPC, and we've tried to incorporate along the way all of the different recommendations, and to my knowledge they've been incorporated into the plans that are in front of you tonight. To my right is Harvey Schilling, who is one of the owners of the building and operates Bluestone Coffee. To his right is, of course, Paul Sionis, who I'd like to call now to go over the project and to address the variances for you. I will. I was going to have you first state his name.
We'll swear him in, too.
Swear him in.
Thank you.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation?
My name is Paul Sionis. I'm the principal architect of Sionis Architecture, PC, located at 8 Hillside Avenue, Montclair, New Jersey.
And, Mr. Chairman, I would offer Paul Sionis as an expert in both architecture and professional planning.
Will accept.
Thank you. Paul, would you please, with your PowerPoint, proceed to review the existing conditions and the proposed improvements?
All right, first I will pass out exhibits, which is a copy of the PowerPoint. Unfortunately, I only have 10 copies. I've never seen this many people here. So please share.
Want to share?
Yeah, let's share one.
But I can't straighten it that way.
Okay, I hope everybody could see either the slide or the handout. So this is an application for 123 Watchung Avenue in Montclair. It's an application to make certain improvements to the building and the property. As you can see on slide number 1, the property is located on the south side of Watchung Avenue, just to the west of North Fullerton Avenue.
Is this a copy of the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, this is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. So the front or the north side of the property faces Watchung Avenue, and the rear or south side of the property faces the Watchung Plaza public parking lot. Property is defined as Lot 11 within Block 3402. Slide number 2 is based on the Montclair interactive zoning map. This shows that the property is located within the NC neighborhood commercial zone, and it's also within the Watchung Plaza Historic District. As you know, we appeared before the Montclair Historic Preservation Commission in March. The parking lot is also within the NC neighborhood commercial zone, but it is not within the historic district. Third slide is based on the property survey that was prepared by Trost surveyors, and the slide shows that the lot is 75 feet wide and 85 feet deep. It's currently improved with a 2-story masonry building that was constructed in 1926. The area to the rear south of the building has historically been paved with asphalt. It currently has a dimension of 17 feet 6.5 inches from the southernmost point of the building, where I'm pointing to the southern property line, and that's the property line that's shared with the Watchung public parking lot. The rear parking area has been traditionally paved with asphalt, and it has been used for on-site parking for approximately six cars, in addition to trash and recycling storage, HVAC units, and a refrigerated walk-in box. So currently the trash and recycling is at the southwest corner of the property. There's a refrigerated walk-in box that's colored in dark gray, and then the lighter beige color is a 2-story stair addition, wood frame stair addition that's part of the original building. Slide number 4.
Excuse me, Paul,
Sure.
before you go on. Can you identify what the pink area is to the left?
Thank you. So pink area to the left is a public alley. It's a 10-foot wide brick paved public alley that accesses the Watchung Avenue public sidewalk to the north to the rear Watchung public parking lot. And then the right side is a 9.7-foot wide private alley that belongs to this subject property, and that alley is also paved with asphalt. Slide number 4.
Can I just ask a
Sure.
question? What's at the end of that stacked alley? Is there a wall or a fence or something on the Watchung Avenue?
No.
It's just open?
So this is, the private alley is open, and I'll show you photographs.
Okay.
The public alley is also open, since it's a pedestrian walkway.
Excuse me, I have a question. How wide is the alleyway where the cars park?
That's 9.7 feet wide. 9.7. The slide number 4 are photographs of the front of the subject building. So the top photograph is the front of 123 Watchung Avenue. It's improved with 2 tenant spaces on the first floor. It has Bluestone Coffee, which is owned by Mr. Schilling, on the east side, and then Reliable Cleaners or Dry Cleaners is on the west side. The second floor of the building contains 4 residential units or 4 apartments. The photograph on the bottom left shows the private alley on the east side of the property. The private alley, again, that's the 9.7-foot wide private alley. And the right side shows the public alley between this subject property and the 1-story building directly to the west. Slide number 5 is a photograph of the rear of the property. And as you can see from the rear of the property, there's an aluminum-sided 2-story wood frame stair enclosure that's attached to the center rear of the building. And this stair provides one of the 2 required egress stairs for the 4 apartments on the second floor. Also in this wood enclosure is a basement, is a wood stairway to the basement below. And as you can see, cars currently park across the rear of this subject property. Approximately 6 cars park across the rear, and about 4 cars park in tandem on the private alley, the 9.7-foot wide alley to the east of the building, on the east side of the property. Next slide, slide number 6. So as I stated, the east side of the property has a 9.7-foot wide private alley. It's paved, and currently Bluestone Coffee parks their staff cars within that alley, and they park there during the hours of operation of Bluestone. I believe it opens at 7 in the morning, and then it closes at 3.
We'll close at 3. Everybody's out by 3.
So by 3 or 3:30 p.m. the cars are gone. And then the photograph on the left is the public alley I described. It's a brick paved public alley belonging to the Township of Montclair. It's 10 feet wide. It leads from the public parking lot to the south to the Watchung Avenue public sidewalk to the north. It currently has a clothing and shoes bin on the southwest corner of that property. It's a Planet Aid clothes and shoes bin. Next slide, number 7. Are 4 photographs of the Watchung Plaza parking lot. Top slide is looking west with my back is towards North Fullerton. To my right in this image is the 123 Watchung Avenue property, and I'm looking at west towards the rear of the buildings that front onto Watchung Plaza, such as the UPS store, the former pharmacy, and Sunrise Bagels. The slide on the top right is looking north, so this is with my back to the south property line. I'm looking north to the subject property, 123 Watchung Avenue. You could see one of several utility poles in the parking lot that have solar panels on the utility poles. So there's one directly to the south of the subject property. And then the image or photograph on the bottom left is looking northeast, again with my back towards, say, the Chase Bank property at Watchung Plaza and Fairfield Street. So looking to the northeast, there's a second utility pole with a solar panel, and we see the subject property, 123 Watchung Avenue. The property slopes, the parking lot slopes from north to south, so it drops in elevation from the south side of 123 Watchung Avenue to the southern property line of the parking lot, where it adjoins the rear yards of the residential properties on Fairfield Street. So it's about a 2-foot drop in elevation from the 123 Watchung Avenue southern property line to the southern property line of the Watchung Plaza parking lot. The slide number 8. Slide number 8 are additional slides of the Watchung Plaza parking lot, and this is to show some of the trash and recycling containers within the parking lot. Frankly, it's pretty messy. You could see top slide is looking southwest. You see dumpsters, trash containers at the rear of the buildings spilling out onto the paved parking lot. Looking west, again, the rear of the same building, you see the dumpsters. To the right, you see a dumpster and trash. Looking northwest within the parking lot, you see trash and recycling. On the paved parking area, you see a dumpster to the right of that on the same photograph. And then at the bottom right photograph is an image of the one township receptacle, and that's a trash can placed in the southwest corner of the parking lot. It's about a 3-foot diameter by 3-foot high trash receptacle. So there's a unfortunately the parking lot needs to be cleaned up, but it hasn't happened yet. The proposal, slide number 9. So the proposal, as I stated, this is an application to repair and improve this existing 2-story wood frame, to repair and improve the existing 2-story wood frame stair enclosure at the back of the building, also to construct a new solar panel roofed carport that's to cover the existing rear parking spaces, and also to clean up and reorganize this site. The carport, the proposed carport, is shown in dark gray where it covers the parking spaces. It's approximately 70 feet wide and 70 feet long and 20 feet in width. It's not to touch the building, so it's to be located 2 feet 8 inches off the rear of the building. The side yard setbacks are 1.25 feet to the east, on the east side, and 1.5 feet on the west side for the carport. And as you'll see on this site plan, this is not adjacent to the buildings on each side. So the east side of the property is adjoins the rear paved area behind the building next door to the east, and then the west side is up against the public parking lot. Let's see. The height of the carport will be 15 feet 6 inches at the northern section of the roof, and there'll be a 10-foot 6 inch height to the underside of the carport at its lowest point where it meets the southern property line, and that was done to accommodate a UPS type vehicle so it could drive underneath the carport if it had to for a delivery. So the proposal is to organize the on-site parking. We're showing 6 90-degree parking stalls along the south side of the property. The stalls generally range 9 feet wide to about 10 feet 7 inches wide, up to 17 feet in depth. We're showing concrete wheel stops at the front side of the parking stalls so the vehicles will not hit the newly restored stair enclosure. 4 of the stalls we're showing on in the public alley. So currently, as I stated, the private alley, excuse me. The Bluestone employee vehicles parked within that private alley. We're showing a reorganization of those stalls. We're calling for the first stall to be separated from the public sidewalk with a 74-inch wide by 74 long by 30-inch wide by 36-inch height fiberglass planter, and in the planter we would install, we're proposing 3 evergreens that are native to Essex County, 3 inkberry shrubs. They'd be planted at a height of 3 to 3.5 feet tall, so that the 3-foot tall planter plus the 3 to 3.5 foot tall evergreens would have a height of 6 to 6.5 feet, approximately 6 feet at the top of the shrubs at the time of planting. And at the top left is an image of a similar planter we used behind the Montclair film building when we redesigned that building at 505 Bloomfield Avenue. We designed a part of the project was to design a donor patio at the rear of the building. So in addition to the patio, we called for planters, and within the planters were evergreens to screen off the view of both sides of that donor patio. So this would be a similar planter and similar shrubs, except those were skip laurels, and we're calling for inkberry hollies.
But there's also an opening, a little opening, so people can access the street.
Thank you. So we're keeping a 3.5 1.5 foot wide space between the planter and the property line so that people can walk through here. And they do walk through here when the cars are not there, and they can walk through here walking on the sides of the cars. This is 9.7 feet wide, which is 0.7 feet wide than a normal parking space. And people do walk between cars and parking spaces.
Just another question. Is there a door, a side door, on the east side of the building?
No, there is not.
There's no door there?
No door there.
Okay.
Oh, I'll describe that, but basically it's an aluminum-sided stair enclosure, and the existing windows are not really windows. They're storm panels that were just placed in existing framed openings. We tried to find photographs of the original building, and we couldn't. There were not many photographs of the rear of these buildings that front onto Watchung Avenue. So we feel that it has a similar appearance to a sleeping porch, which was typical from the 1920s and 30s. And I'll go through the elevations a little bit more, but the idea is to repair it, to remove the aluminum siding, restore the original wood siding, which we saw underneath the aluminum siding, repair the trim work, which is in poor shape under the aluminum siding, remove the aluminum from the roof overhang. We've actually selected a historic color for the exterior and put in new double-hung windows with a 2/2 pattern. So that's the extent of the repairs. Let's see. Still on slide 9, and one more item, just the parking stalls within the private alley. We're calling for a new wheel stop, concrete wheel stop, so that the vehicle parked in parking stall number 10 will hit the wheel stop before it hits the new fiberglass planter. And we're calling for the same thing along the rear parking stalls. If this is going to be a renovation of this stair enclosure, we don't want cars hitting it, so we're calling for either wheel stops, or in 2 cases we're calling for a 3-inch diameter concrete bollard where we feel cars would stop when they hit that. Yes. We looked at an alternate with the bollards to allow people to access the trash enclosure easily. The tenants from the top floor will be using the 4 trash cans in the trash enclosure, and we feel that we wanted to have the cars stop shorter there to allow the people to walk to those trash enclosures. However, I would be fine with having wheel stops there. People can walk around the cars, or the cars will not be there overnight. Right. Exactly. So we're fine with substituting the wheel stops for that. We'll have the 17-foot 6-inch space. Otherwise, I prepared a list of automobiles that were 173 inches and less in length, but I prefer that we have the wheel stops. Yeah, I agree. So the proposal also is to organize the trash and the recycling enclosure, to move it from that southwest corner into the center of the rear of the lot so that it's further away from the public alley. And I'll talk about this a bit, but currently with the trash and recycling next to the public alley, the trash containers get filled up pretty quickly, and it's not by the bluestone trash, it's by people walking in the alley or other people in the neighborhood. So one of the goals is to move the trash and recycling away from the public alley, put it right in the center where it's easily accessible to the parking lot for trash collectors, and also easily accessible to the tenants within the building.
Can I ask you a question about, this is hypothetical, is there ever any discussion with the merchants in the area to combine their trash into one container that everybody could use, rather than every building having their own little containers?
And I could let Ms. Talley address this, but several years ago when we came in with an application for the Townhouse Wines, which is several properties to the west of this, we were told that there were discussions at the township to create one central trash and recycling container within the Watchung Plaza parking lot. It just never happened.
Yeah, we did recommend that, and
Some cooperation, I'm sure, yeah.
So part of this is Mr. Schilling can't wait. So he's going to take this upon himself to build sturdy galvanized steel trash and recycling enclosures, which I'll show you. And the finish of the trash and recycling enclosure will be to match the finish of the new carport. So the next slide, number 10, is the rear elevation of the carport. So prior to opening Bluestone, Mr. Schilling worked in the solar energy industry. So his goal is to install a new galvanized steel carport that's covered with solar panels from west to east. The solar panel cells are to be flush with the carport roof surface, and the carport roof surface will have a 8 degree pitch. So it's a slight pitch, but we have the solar company expert here, and Mr. Schilling could also address questions about the solar panels. But yeah.
Can I direct your attention just for 1 minute to sheet 16?
Okay.
Okay. You refer to the panels being flush. You're referring to the flushness that's shown in the photographs to the left.
On page 16, if you jump ahead to
on
16,
page
correct?
16,
Yes.
We're not proposing the raised panels that you see to the lower right,
Correct. Yeah, we'll describe that slide, but correct, the panels will be flush with the roof surface, not raised up above the roof surface, not to be individual panels, and you'll see that on slide 16. So again, the carport is to extend across the rear parking areas, so it'll cover the parking spaces, and will also cover the trash and recycling enclosure, which I'll describe. And the columns of the carport, which are steel columns, they'll be located directly on line with the stripes of the parking spaces below. So in addition to the proposed carport, the other improvements that are proposed, and we jumped ahead a little bit before, but would be improvements to the stair enclosure, such as removing the aluminum siding from the stair enclosure, restoring the original wood clapboard that's underneath it, restore the trim that's around the windows, and then paint it, as I said, a historic color, which is this Hail Navy as the main body color. We're also proposing to remove the storm panels. As I said, currently, previously someone removed all the windows from the stair enclosure and put just single glazed storm panels. So the idea is to, we'd be putting in double hung wood windows in a 2/2 pattern. And we feel these were most likely original to the stair enclosure. We discussed this at the Historic Commission, whether it should be 2/2 or 1/1. The main building has 1/1 windows, but all of those are replacement windows. So as I said before, there's no record of what this building originally looked like when it was constructed, but it is reminiscent, at least the rear is pretty reminiscent of many of the sleeping porches that were built in Montclair in the 1920s and 30s.
Just before you... Oh.
Yep, sorry. Yes, I'll describe that, yes.
Yeah, but just before you move on that slide, it looks like the carport has a cutout, right, for the
over here,
the sleeping porch.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Question for you. So the tenants' apartments, is that carport cutting off their windows?
You'll see in one of the other slides, it stops short of those windows. So
but it does go higher than
it does go higher than the bottom of the windows of these 5 windows here.
Yeah, but there's like a foot or so between.
Right, and then it's 2.8 feet away from the building at the closest point.
But basically, the bottom half of a window is looking at this carport.
The bottom half of the window, if you're sitting in a chair, look at the back of this top part of the carport. Correct. Mm-hmm. So the other improvements would be to clean and paint the existing exhaust duct. So there's an existing exhaust duct leading from Bluestone out the rear of this stair enclosure and straight up vertically. So it'd be to clean and paint that, and then also to install a new 16-inch by 16-inch makeup air vent duct on the southeast side of the stair enclosure, or southwest side of the stair enclosure, as required to improve the airflow within Bluestone Kitchen. So Bluestone Kitchen has had some issues with the air. Mr. Schilling might be able to address this, but he's brought in experts, and they stated he really needed to have makeup air in addition to his existing exhaust air.
So the idea with the makeup air vent, if I have this right, I have no expertise in it, but the exhaust duct takes air
all the air out.
from the kitchen, and
if you don't have
diminishes
something,
the supply of air inside the building.
Correct.
And the makeup air vent pushes fresh air down into the building and replenishes it.
correct. And there was never a makeup air vent installed, so it's just the exhaust for many years. So also part of the proposal is to clean and strip and repaint both the rear wall, the brick that's currently painted, and also at the Historic Commission, it was recommended to paint the front wall of the building. It's also, the brick is painted, so part of the application will be to clean, strip, and paint the rear wall of the building and also the front wall of the building, which is also painted. The Montclair Historic Commission reviewed the proposed improvements at their March 28th meeting, and as you saw in your memo, they recommended approval of this proposed, the proposed project. Next slide is the east elevation. And I think this will answer the question. So where I'm pointing to, which is the easterly side of that carport, and it's 2.8 feet from the southerly wall of the building, so it stops short of the building. I'm pointing to the stair enclosure. This is the carport. The carport has a 2 foot 6 inches of height from the paving, asphalt paving, to the lowest point. As I said, that's what's required for UPS type truck. 10 feet 6 inches, excuse me. And then the highest point of the carport roof is 15 feet 6 inches above the ground level.
Is there a reason for the slope, the exact degree of the slope?
Yes. We swear, Mr. Schillingen, to... Do you want to discuss?
Sir, you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please, using a microphone, would you please state your name and business affiliation for the record?
I'm Harvey Schilling. I own 50% of the property at 123 Watchung Avenue, and I own the restaurant Bluestone Coffee Company.
So the question is is there a reason for the 8-degree pitch to this roof and the solar panels?
Well, in a perfect world, it would probably be at about 42 degrees in this part of New Jersey to catch the maximum amount of light from the sun, generate the most electricity. It's just not practical to go that far in this application, so we have as much of an angle as we can to catch as much light as we can.
Okay.
Another question on panels. The panels on the roof are very kind of loosely spaced. If you consider to put all the solar on the roof, then you could probably get the free solar temperature, and then you would eliminate the necessity of carport.
We need a certain amount of room, right?
Okay, so we have
about 40 panels at least.
We have the person here who designed the panel. This is probably a good time to have him testify, him come up to the microphone. So Brian Kelly. Here, you can have my seat.
Mr. Kelly, would you, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Sure. My name is Brian Kelly, and I'm the president of Seabright Solar.
And where is that located, sir?
We're located in Ocean Township, New Jersey.
Mr. Ianwala, do you want to repeat your question, perhaps?
I noticed that the solar panels on the roof are somewhat loosely spaced. You have the other dense. Just look at it very briefly. I thought you could get 45 additional, get 53. You may not need to go with carpet. And if all you know, it's all.
No, thank you. Yeah, our designers, in conjunction with the manufacturer, maximize the amount we can put on the roof. Not because of the weight. The weight was okay, but because of setbacks, the way the panels are laid out, they maxed out for shading purposes and for setback reasons and access, like for safety reasons. They put as many panels on the roof. That was their main goal, is to put as many on the roof first, and then that's why we spoke with the owner, Harvey, about adding them in the carport, because the roof system was maximized based on the equipment that we use, so we couldn't fit any more up there. So that's why we,
You walk between the rows, going to the space?
yeah, more so on the perimeter, like on the perimeter and any obstructions.
You need to walk around the...
I don't want to misspeak since I'm under oath, but I believe it's about 4 feet, but I don't know. I can't say
That's
for
what I was
certain.
thinking, you have a 4-foot perimeter, and then densely packed, and also where a building shaped like an H,
Mhm.
you could put a 4-foot perimeter walk. You get a lot, well, I'm just kind of curious.
Tony, just to interrupt, so I put the slide up, number 13, which is the roof plan, just to help everybody.
Yeah, so the way the panels go out, we really didn't have any more real estate to work with to practically fit anything else up there.
I see a lot of real estate here. Suppose you took those panels and just put them together, instead of them being, there's perhaps a 1-foot space between the horizontal rows. Suppose you compress those and add at least 2 more rows.
Oh, I understand. Then they would...
You also have that space in the middle.
Yeah, the space, well, the inter-row spacing is there for shade purposes, because there's a slight pitch to the solar panels, and then on the perimeter, we wouldn't have, like for instance on the east and west, there simply isn't enough space to fit any more solar because the dimensions of the panels, and but my designers are very careful and they work with the manufacturer, so we...
I get that.
Okay.
You consult them and shade.
Yeah.
Same with parapet, probably.
Yeah, sure.
Can we just review the parapet and view issues that came up during the development review committee, because I think it may be impacting the number of solar panels. What is the view situation we had talked about?
Yeah, I'll skip ahead to those slides then. Just remind me to go back.
You want? I mean, we can get to it later if you want to link it, but you want to link it to the question that my colleague had about the amount of solar. In other words, the aesthetic view. From, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen these slides.
The goal for everybody was to prevent a view of the panels, which are not prettiest to look at, and to create some kind of more decorative detailing around the perimeter of the port, and still accommodate the solar gains that the applicant was looking for. And then the question was, what was the pitch of the roof, and what kind of banding or parapet banding could be used. And so I'll throw it back to Mr. Sionis to pick
I'll
that
start
up.
with that.
Yeah.
So we could jump ahead to the first thing we were asked for at the Development Review Committee was the sightline diagrams from the, this is slide number 15. Slide number 15, we were asked to provide a diagram looking from the Watchung Public parking lot with sight lines from pedestrians, what they would see at 2 different points within that parking lot. So the top slide, the top image that's labeled Sightline Diagram A shows a 6-foot tall person standing next to a car as parked in that Watchung Plaza parking lot, and there's sight lines towards the carport. In this case, I feel that they would not see the solar panels on the roof. And then the second diagram, which is diagram B, we showed a person all the way back at the southerly property line, and as I stated before, there's a 2-foot drop in elevation from the southerly property line of 123 Watchung Avenue back to that common property line between the Watchung Plaza parking lot and the rear of the residential properties that front onto Fairfield Street. So we showed a 6-foot tall person there, and what the sight lines would be towards the carport.
What's holding up the carport?
Right, those are steel columns, as I stated, they'd be placed within the striped area of the parking spaces. So those are galvanized steel columns.
Are there? How many? Yeah. How many are there? Yeah. 4?
Right.
4?
Correct. There's 4 of them, as shown on the site plan. And then the other diagram we were asked to show, and this was requested by the Historic Commission, this is slide number 14. So slide number 14, we were asked for 2 additional exhibits or diagrams. And the first one was an exhibit of sort of a cross-section through the existing building, through 123 Watchung Avenue. And that's the top image. So that's side view of 123 Watchung Avenue, looking from the east. And as you can see, there are parapet walls. The parapet wall at the front of the building is 3 feet high, and then it tapers down to 1.83 feet at the southerly side of the property, but it continues across the side approximately 1.83 feet, and then it steps, as you can see from that bottom drawing, it steps as part of the decorative parapet for the front of the building. So on this diagram, we showed the proposed roof-mounted solar panels as locations were provided to us, and these panels are shown at a 5-degree angle above the roof, and it's a flat roof, and we were told that it's a maximum 12-inch height off the roof surface to the top of the panels. And then we showed
So Paul, all of the panels on the roof are fully below the parapet for the complete perimeter of the roof, correct?
Correct.
And just to confirm, that's with the angling as well?
That's shown, yeah. So with the angling, we were told that it was a 12-inch maximum height to the top of the panel. And then to continue, we were asked to look at what a pedestrian would see from the Watchung Avenue public sidewalk and what a pedestrian would see on the opposite side, the north side sidewalk across the street, across Watchung Avenue. And based on this diagram, you could see that there would be no view of the solar panels on the flat roof. Then we were asked for another diagram, and that was a view of the carport from Watchung Plaza. View of the carport from Watchung Avenue. So that's a typo. And here you can see we're proposing that planter that I described before. So that's that 36-inch high planter with the 3-foot to 3.5-foot high inkberry evergreen shrubs on top. And then there's the carport, and the carport is 63.3 feet back. This part of the carport is 63.3 feet back from the facade of the building. There's an existing street tree. We kept copying the photograph and the tree from the photograph of the tree. The tree is actually a little taller than what's shown here. But it's this wide. It extends to the front of Mr. Schilling's building. And we recognize that this is only from May through October. So the tree is in leaf from May to October. So there would be a period of time from November through April when leaves are not on the tree, when there would be a view of that into that 9.7-foot wide alley, and out of that 9.7 feet, it's about a 7-foot section of carport that extends from west to east.
So Mr. Sion,
yeah.
Logically, if one follows your diagrams and sight lines, it appears that there is no view of the solar panels. Would you agree as a condition that if indeed, because sometimes things change, the height of elements when installed, sometimes a layer of something has to go on and it's not covered at the time of measurement, would you agree that at the point the installation occurs, if there are views of the panels from either the rear or the front, that the applicant would create a decorative band of sorts around the roof to block any such views of the solar panels?
I think you'd be amenable to that as long as it doesn't block the panels.
As long as it doesn't block the light.
Well, you might have to move the panels in slightly. You might be able to get every single square inch of solar accordingly. Particularly, Mr. Tony was commenting on perhaps a different configuration of the panels to get a little more real estate around the perimeter. I think this is a historic district. We're dealing with people walking around, and the concern should not be, as much as I know you want, you getting every last cent of solar gain from electricity, but more the public's view from the street and from the rear in terms of the historic district.
I think Mr. Sionis indicated that we would try to do that to the greatest extent we can. While I have Mr. Kelly here, because I learned this, I thought of this as well, a skirt or a flange, and we talked about it at the DRC. And I'd just like you to comment, so it's clear from the record, that there are some limitations with respect to shading and covering.
Yes, correct. On the carport in particular, we did have a discussion at the other public meeting, and the concern would be if we erect anything that goes above the height of the low end of the solar panels, that they would shade the panels, and that's how we explained at the prior meeting that it would defeat the purpose of having the panels there because they would be too shaded from any kind of an obstruction. So if we elevated something above it to, for instance, like hide the panels on the carport, it would effectively shade the panels at the same time.
Well, again, the purpose needs to be that we don't see the panels, not that you get solar energy on your carport. So I think that conceptually you have to deal with that. Either shrink your panels in slightly, so whatever, if there is a skirt, it's hitting 1 foot in.
Or reduce the number of panels.
But this is on the roof that you're speaking, correct?
Both
places.
Carport. So if the angle, so I'm struggling to understand how this would be an issue in the carport. Are you saying if the angle is above 8 degrees?
Things
perhaps?
change in installation with construction. And
Could the condition just be an 8-degree angle, though? I don't know.
In other words, they're calculating an angle. Right. It seems logical from the diagrams that we're not going to see it. But in practicality, when you actually install, sometimes things change. You have to add something you didn't anticipate. The exact height of something is not there. It's like putting a refrigerator into a pre-existing panel. Sometimes they don't calculate the 8th screw there, and now your panel doesn't fit. So the point being, it's fine that they want to have solar energy there and a carport, but the key issue here is to prevent an unsightly view of what are not particularly attractive solar panels. Now, we talked about the fact that there are shingle-type panels, but they're not approved for New Jersey yet, and may not ever be approved. Right. It's not clear. They're in beta testing at this point. So, the issue here is, if it's not seen, great. If it is seen, some kind of skirt or banding needs to be put around, as the chair said, in both places, so that people don't see it. It's pretty simple.
Regardless of the pitch.
Right, and I just wanted to see what we were holding them to, so it's very clear. Because I 100% agree with you. I just want to make sure whatever we put in as conditions are very clear to them.
Well, that's what I'm having a little difficulty with. Right. I understand conceptually what you're saying, Martin, about if there's a change in the installation, the way it goes in. But what I'm having difficulty with is the standard to be applied.
If seen from the street.
Can I just jump in here?
Sure.
We're being presented with site view diagrams that show that using the pitch and the installation scenario that they're proposing, that you can't see the panels. If that changes, you have to produce updated panels that show line of sight exactly what those show, that you still can't see the panels. And I think it's as simple as that.
And right now, what's the distance where you would not see them? Because we have a distance where you can see them and a distance where you cannot see them.
97 point some feet.
From that distance, it seems as though you could see them. Am I misreading?
No, you're correct. So someone standing against the fence that's in that Watchung Plaza parking lot, you could start to see, you could see the bottom edge of the panel there.
Because that's all I was looking for, is a distance from which you're guaranteed not to see them, and I think that would clarify.
You would see them, obviously, if you were,
200 feet, you see them clear as day. But I'm saying right now, is there a distance, just a clear 60 feet, 70 feet? Because that would be clear for the carport, and then I think the roof is even simpler.
Right. I think, I might think the condition's a good idea about the degrees, limiting it to 8 degrees, to make sure it doesn't get.
What Mr. Schwartz is saying in part is that, if it doesn't get installed at 8 degrees, or if it is installed at 8 degrees and I can see it at 50 feet, then it needs to be addressed, because that's not what we're presenting to them.
Right.
But I also agree with Mr. Neese that it can't just be, you need a standard, as you said.
Right.
I think these drawings provide the standard, is what I would suggest.
So, in effect, Mr. Owen, what you're doing is saying that these drawings cannot vary. If what is installed, as Martin says, varies in any way from these drawings.
Then what do you want to do? Send it
You have to create new drawings that demonstrate the same thing that the original drawings demonstrate, that you can't see the panels at these distances. Because I think even up against the fence, what you're going to see is like the edge of the panel. And how thick is the panel?
It's less than 2 inches.
Right. So you're going to see from that distance, you're going to see something that's 2 inches wide. You're not going to know what that is. It could be a piece of metal. It could be a piece of glass. You know. And are these panels glass composition, or are they something else?
Should I go to?
But
I mean, we could go to.
The frames of the panels are anodized aluminum, so the frames are, and then the top is glass.
It's glass. Okay.
But
On the carport,
Oh, sure.
My question did have, in terms of the look, I don't really care what they look like. I think we could clean this thing back there.
Now we have to do the rest.
It's true. Do you really need to spend so much money on this?
We don't want it to be the nicest thing ever back there.
You get the energy off the roof, because it is sort of a thing. I think this is also like an amenity for the building, right? To have it- And I just wanted to hear from you guys on that. This is considered.
Yeah.
Because it's a carport, is this an accessory structure? It's not listed as a structure in the table. So I just go back to Arthur, is this considered an accessory structure? Do we need to consider variance?
Can I help you with that? It's an accessory structure. In the NC zone, you're allowed to have indoor and outdoor parking facilities. The zoning ordinance has a definition of structure. This clearly qualifies as a structure. It's accessory.
Where is it on the table?
Oh, I don't know.
We evaluated the variances
But
as
it's
an accessory
interesting, the word
structure.
carport is used.
I will.
Make this thing, I don't see this carport structure as an accessory structure.
Right. Outdoor parking facility. Right.
So there's no variance, so you don't need, I'm just trying to get a variance for the structure.
Only for the setbacks. Well,
It's not
for the structure.
It does, you're allowed to have the structure, but the
It's for the
structure is
setbacks.
required to have 3 setbacks. The
position of the
We
structure.
will get into it, we'll explain to you why.
Right.
If
So
you
the
look
use
at-
is allowed.
I
All
just
right.
thought we needed variances.
If you
Oh.
look at page 7 of the planning report, it lists the variances for the accessory structure.
Okay.
Right.
What are the variances that we need to
2 side yards and 1 rear yard.
What do you need for the rear?
It's supposed to be 20 feet, but the build.
So this is right into 20 foot. Now I'm clear on that.
So while we're talking about the structure, what color is the structure frame? You've identified the
And we-
color of the paneling,
Right.
and you have a color depicted on the drawing. I don't know what color that's supposed to be. I don't know whether that's the intended color or whether it's going to be something else.
Right, so we've discussed that this would either be a dark gray or a black structure, and the intent is also to match the proposed trash and recycling enclosures, which I haven't shown yet, to this, so it'll all be tied together.
So when is that decision going to be made, and on what basis? Whether it's gray or black?
We haven't, I mean, we've discussed dark gray or black.
Pick.
All right,
Pick one.
Dark gray.
gray is fine.
I
So it
think
matches
that's
the
a
plant,
good choice.
matches the planter, it matches the trash and
With the blue.
recycling. Okay.
So I have a question for you. Is there any other reason besides holding up these solar panels that you want this carport? That,
Well, I mean, a carport's nice for the tenants.
but you're blocking half their windows, but yet you think that's a good idea?
I think it adds value. I'm not answering the question. I think it adds value to the
I
park.
mean, they're excited about it.
Oh,
They're
okay.
happy about it.
So you've talked to them about it? Yeah, yeah,
Well, I
okay.
mentioned, you know, I did discuss it because we're going to have to do something about the parking and everything while the construction's going. So kind of give you a heads up.
Okay, my other question is, how old is your roof? Is that relatively new?
Yeah, we just did that. I purchased the building 5 years ago, so it was about 3.5 years old.
Sounds relatively new. Okay, thank you.
And then is there a sense of the light and heat that's radiated at all off of the solar panels? And again, if it's very minimal, I'm just not familiar with what the impact may be inside of the units that are at a particular angle next to the solar panels.
Yeah, we've never had an issue with that. We have done thousands of jobs in Jersey, and we haven't had an issue with like reflection or heat complaints of any nature.
Have they been positioned below residential windows
Well,
as opposed to just on rooftops?
Well, we've done carports before and so forth. I mean, this exact application, we don't know.
I
understand.
normally, when you're doing carports, you're not that close to a window. And normally these are on the roofs of structures, so you don't have windows adjacent. So, and you mentioned that you've done other applications. Do those other applications
Well, I know
similar to this or not?
Well, in terms of going up against buildings, yes, I can't say that I've had an exact, this exact project anywhere else. We've had them against buildings and awnings and so forth, but I know that the solar panels the manufacturer of SunPower has, I believe it's anti-reflective glare coating to it to minimize any chance of a reflection or a glare. So they factor that in for a lot of reasons, not just for this kind of an application, but for every application, because even rooftops are visible from other homes, and carports they're all around office buildings, so you could have the same effect that there are huge carport installations all throughout New Jersey, adjacent commercial buildings and so forth, where they also have windows and so forth.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of any issues, but they do have like an anti-reflective, anti-glare coating on them.
What about throwing off heat? Does the anti-glare, anti-reflective coating mitigate that, or is there?
Yeah, I've never come across an issue with it. With the heat has been an issue because the heat is mainly absorbed by the metals and glasses, and because it's a dark surface there.
And if it's not reflecting, then there shouldn't be any heat bouncing up against.
It should be minimal. I've never heard of an issue from heat coming off the solar panels.
And then also on the panels on the roof.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
It's okay. It's okay.
on the
It's okay. I know. I'm very shy.
On the roof, I saw the angle is 5 degrees. Is that correct? Compared to the carport structure being 8 degrees. And then follow on to that, regardless of the angle, are they adjustable? Is there a chance that the angle may change after installation?
No, it's a fixed angle.
Okay. And then it is 5 degrees, or would
I want to make sure it's, and I should know this with great certainty. I think you said 5 degrees. Okay, because it's either 5 or 10 degrees. Those are the two options we have. So either way, it's a low profile.
Speaking of angles, I just have a safety question. I've taken reports where once you get a good amount of snow on the solar panels, they have crushed windshields. And with the foot traffic we have back there, with the public alleyway, have you guys taken into consideration anything, as far as safety of stuff coming off of the solar panels when we get heavy snows like we do?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why the pitch also isn't that steep, so that the snow would reside there and melt off. It's a pretty slight pitch, even though it is pitched. But aside from that, we haven't had any issues with that. Steeper roofs, when we do certain homes have a steeper pitch, and then we can add snow guards and so forth if it's at risk.
I want to know. Yeah.
But in this case, it's just not that steep of a pitch, so we haven't had to factor in snow guards or anything like that.
So there's no gutters or anything that would capture the water runoff. It just runs. Yeah. Okay. Hey, I have no question, if I may.
Of course, no problem.
Do the tenants benefit at all from these panels, or is it just the businesses and the common area of the building?
The power actually just goes to the restaurant. The tenants don't get they don't get any power from it, but they do get the benefit of having a carport, which is.
I'm talking about the solar energy that's produced.
It does not go to the.
It does not go to the apartments. Yeah.
And I have a few questions that I've been writing along the way, so they're a little all over the place. So, the alley, those your tenants that park in the alley?
My employees.
Your employees. So, is there overnight parking in that alley? It's empty.
Empty.
So there's no lighting?
We're going to put lighting.
You're going to put lighting.
So I didn't get to the lighting testimony.
Oh, okay. The and when Officer Cook talked about the snow, so if there's a lot of snow, it doesn't slide off on the angle, or when, and this is glass, so it's very slippery, I would think. So if the snow slides off, goes at the foot of the entrance of the car park. I mean, and what happens then? And how do the cars back out? And that's
And who cleans it up
And who
since it's
cleans it
now in a
up?
municipal lot?
right.
Well, we always clean that area anyway.
You have a plowing service that comes when it snows?
I'm the plowing service.
Okay. But that's a potential lot of snow, that slide.
But it-
When you have
but it-
a foot of snow already on the ground, then maybe another foot falling on top of that snow. It's a lot of snow.
Yeah, but at 8-degree pitch, you shouldn't have any snow sliding
No?
off that.
Would
It
you
should-
be
it
okay
should
with a
melt.
condition that you, the plowing service, would make sure that if there's any additional snow?
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I have
Come
to
on,
do that. I have
that's,
to do that
that's,
anyway.
that's,
But
But it'd
But
be the
the-
same amount of snow to remove either way, because if the
Right.
carport wasn't there, it's not that big of a footprint, so all the snow would still have to be removed.
but it's not the same amount of snow.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Because it's three, so these, if I have the dimensions correct, it should be, what, almost 15 feet across? And so, right, so it's that whole footprint then collected within
Right.
a 2-foot zone or so. So there's
Yep.
a high concentration of snow in that one area.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right. It's snow
You
on
did-
top of snow.
If it did slide off, which we don't anticipate, but no, my point was just the amount of snow that falls in that area would be the same. If it did, even if it did fall off, which we don't anticipate it falling off, because it would hit the ground regardless if the carport wasn't there.
But it's directed at a certain spot.
Is it the heat though, just so I understand? Because I'm thinking of this as just a pool surface. Sorry, Robin.
No, it's a
I
good
think you're
question.
already going.
It's okay, Dan. That's okay,
But
Dan.
yes, are you suggesting that it would actually melt on the panels itself and just come off as kind of water, and
Yeah.
so there may be
Yeah,
ice, but it wouldn't
exactly.
be
When the
snow?
sunlight hits it, it just slowly melts off, just like on a flat roof or something like that.
Yeah, but the
But
panel
during the-
itself
during
doesn't
the-
generate heat.
I was gonna say,
Is
but
that
during
what
That's
the
we're
what's
winter-
talking?
confusing me, because
No,
you say
it's
like a
it's
typical
dark
roof.
surface,
and-
so that the sunlight can penetrate, and you're up to, like say 6 or 8 inches of snow when it's in full sun. So, and the surface is black, so it heats up. It'll retain some heat when the sunlight hits it.
So it's like a black roof where it absorbs the heat, then reflects it back?
Yeah, it'll absorb the heat better than it would a white surface or a light surface.
But then it's
And it
going
will
to...
remain warm, and then
Yeah.
there'll be a certain amount of melting, but it's not going to be, you know how snow rather melts on your roof. If you have it well insulated, it melts, but it's slow. But even if you have a dark roof, it's going to melt, but it's slow enough to turn into water and kind of drizzle off that way.
But in the process of generating electricity, clearly I don't know much about solar panels, the panel itself doesn't get hot. Does it?
They'll get warmer to the touch, just like a roof would, because they're made out of.
But the roof is from sun, I'm talking about from the electricity that generates.
No.
That doesn't cause the panel to get hot.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's only the dark color of the roof
Yes,
that...
yeah, got it. I just,
So if there were no panels, but it was still the same dark color, it'd be the same heat load. Councilor Schlager.
Oh, okay. So you also said that the panel is 2 inches thick?
A little less than 2 inches thick,
Okay.
yeah.
So isn't there a gap and a space between where they're set and the panel? Isn't there like a little
No,
space in between
the
there?
carport itself.
No. On the
On the roof?
on the roof.
Yes, on a roof. Yeah, there's airflow underneath it.
Right. So how big is that space?
It varies because it's on a pitch. The panels are on a pitch and the roof is horizontal. So it varies depending what point it is. But at the low end, it's probably a couple inches. And then the high end, it goes up to closer to a foot.
So let's come back to that. So are we
Yep.
going to see the edge of the roof? Are we going to see the space and then another element on top of that? What are we going to exactly do? Like a cross-section
Are you
of the
talking
edge?
about the building?
No, on the carport.
Oh, I'm
Because
sorry. Okay.
the pictures of the carport, it looks like it's flat.
Exactly.
Like it's
on the
flat- like it's
and
flush.
it pitched to the
I
panel.
I apologize. I thought you were talking about the roof. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay.
In other words,
I'm talking about.
So on the carport,
The
you
carport,
wanna
I'm talking.
try that again.
Yeah, take two. Yeah, it's just a flush surface the whole way.
Is
So
there a distance between the panel? Is there any space between the panel and the actual roof of the carport?
No, it's a flush mounted
It's
system.
right. There's no space. It's right on
Correct.
top of it.
Yes.
So those panels don't need air, but the other panels need air.
They get it from underneath. Like the the way the structure is, there are gaps between the supports, so they get plenty of air from underneath.
What is the roof made of on the carport?
Steel.
Oh, it's all steel all the way across?
Yeah,
I know you steel columns,
the
but...
structure is steel, yeah.
So what's
underneath the
flats?
panels,
What's
yeah.
underneath the panels? Is there, because you're saying that it's getting air, so is there actually just areas where there are just panels that you could look up underneath
Yeah, you can
and not see?
You can see the underside of the panels.
Okay.
That's where the airflow is. So you have the supports from the car.
So how sturdy are these panels in case, like, we have a good storm and a branch falls off, and as we've been seeing lately,
There's no
I mean, would
trees
they
back
withstand something like a flying tree branch, from across the street hitting it?
Yeah, I mean, within reason, I would liken it to maybe the strength of like a windshield or something like that. So they're durable. They're rated for a golf ball size hail roughly. They're very durable. You can stand on them. If a tree falls on them, of course, like almost anything else.
Right. If the whole tree falls,
but if limbs fall on it or hail and stuff like that, they're not.
It should withstand that.
Yeah, they're very durable.
Okay. I have a couple other questions. Construction and disruption in that back area. How long do you anticipate the carport to be constructed, and then subsequent installation of the panels?
Yeah, the panels themselves will take about a day. That'll be pretty quick.
One day?
That's just the panels. The structure itself, because they have to dig footings, then get inspections, and then do that. But the whole process, as long as the inspections are in a timely manner, the structure will be about a week long at the most.
A week?
At the most, depending on the gap in
really?
Between. Yes, it's a pretty small carport, but I would estimate 1 week.
Is that going to be totally on the site, or is that going to spill over into the parking lot and obstruct circulation in the parking lot?
Right.
Well, during the construction, that'll be blocked off. The parking spaces.
Not your parking. I'm talking about the public parking lot, where the private lot.
Gotcha.
We assume is going to be tied up with construction, but the issue is whether or not that's going to interfere with the public parking.
Yeah, I don't believe it will. I could look at. I don't believe we're going to have any obstruction in the public parking lot.
Can we guarantee that?
Are you not flying in steel?
Sorry?
Are you not flying in steel? I mean, if this whole thing is steel, how are you going to get the steel beams up there?
I'd have to look at the parking layout to see the public parking layout outside of what the footprint is of the array. Because I don't recall what the
I mean, it would just seem like you need a small crane. The truck-mounted crane, you'd need some sort of crane.
Or the digger with the arm.
And that's going to be off-site. Yeah. It's got to be off-site. There's not enough room to maneuver that and to put it up on-site.
Yeah.
Okay. My other question is, I've seen it back there where big trash, garbage trucks come in there and they pick up a lot of those dumpsters with that arm that goes up and dumps into the, that comes down. Those are very large trucks. So this new structure, it could be likely that one of the garbage trucks might bump into it. I mean, this is, with all due respect, a foreign object that's that's very out of character than what's been there for 60 years. And it just seems that it's ripe for somebody to bump into a truck, or I'm sure there's deliveries that are back there for the. There's a delicatessen, there's a convenience store, there's the pizzeria, there's the liquor store. Are there deliveries back there with big trucks that are going to knock into this?
As you can see from some of the photos, the other buildings are right at the rear property line. I mean, this building currently is set back 17 feet 6 inches, and the carport will be 10 feet 6 inches above the ground. And it was done at that specific height so a vehicle could pull underneath it and not hit it.
How is your garbage collected, though? Is it automated or is it manual? Do they have arms that lift stuff?
Well, what they do is they pull it out away from the building, and it does get put on arms, but not from the parking area. Even now, without the carport, they
pull it out of its garage.
Yeah,
pull it into
they have to pull it out
to the public parking lot where the truck would be.
Okay.
That access maneuver would be a distance away from the column supporting the carport, because those columns are only center supported, sitting roughly halfway into the spaces.
And it should be high enough, and the
10.6
high enough so that there shouldn't be any interference with.
to be able to access, to be able to access the trash enclosure itself from.
But not
the
to
access.
flip the whole
Maybe not to
container
flip
over
it, they'd have
top.
to pull
right?
it out into the parking lot.
Right, it'd have to be pulled away to then be able to flip.
So that's going to be your problem, to get a trash collector up there that will accommodate your physical setup.
Yeah, when we talk about the trash enclosure, I mean, Mr. Schilling specifically has to have
Because you have private
dumpsters that would roll out.
Private trash collection.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
I think every
So that's,
store has its own trash collector, if I'm not mistaken, right? There's,
they have to engage private.
there's, yeah,
They may all do the same.
It's the same company,
Yeah.
right.
but it's all private.
But you'll have to work it out with them, how they pull it out without damaging
Yeah.
them.
Well, I mean, that's what they do now. There's not an enclosure, but they pull them out sideways, that they roll it that way.
Just want to finalize the aesthetics of what this is going to look like on slide 15. We've got kind of an industrial steel look here. Is that going to be like the typical Sionis awning effect on some of your buildings, or is this something else?
But this will be as dictated by the solar company, correct? I mean, you're using a standard steel columns in your steel structure.
Do we have a picture of what that's going to look like? Because it is going to be, we're going to see the edge from the street, as Councilor Schlager points out. The front view is going to show us the band at the top. Do we have a picture of that? That's, other than this little rendering right here.
Which makes it so light and airy, but in actuality, it's
There are samples of
dark
carports
gray.
in there, and
Yeah, it's going to look like that.
I mean, so if you look at slide 16, I think it's the top right is
That's way.
is that correct?
yeah,
On page 16, top right?
Is that
the color of the carport structure and the frame, the aluminum frame of the solar modules is very similar, so they blend in well.
Yeah, that really
That's why
doesn't work looking at a historic district. I mean, it just doesn't.
Yeah, it is the back of the building, and the parking lot is, I mean, the building's in the historic district, the parking lot is not.
Right, but you're seeing it from the street.
yes.
Seeing the front edge from the
You're
street,
seeing the edge from the street.
63
Yes.
feet back, correct.
So the
Historic preservation had no problems with that.
Actually, your view is blocked somewhat from the street because the building that's on the street comes out further, and that kind of shields that parking area somewhat.
Correct.
So you'll see it as you're walking. You'll see it as you're walking down the street, or you're coming towards Watchung. You won't see it as you're driving away from Watchung Avenue, but you'll get a glimpse of it.
You'll get a glimpse of it.
You'll get a glimpse of it. If you look down,
You stand there and look at it.
you would
Right.
have to look down the parking lot in order to see it.
right.
Right.
So, and the HPC had no problem with that, Steve?
No problem.
It looks like the Sonic hamburger store, restaurant on Route 46.
That's exactly right.
Can I ask a question? So I was in a building that had an array of solar panels, and I see it's here too. At the base of the steel, there's brick. The steel doesn't go straight into the ground. Is that true of what you're doing here?
No, it's just going to be
A steel post that will be set in the ground in
Right.
cement. I mean, because your pictures there also show brick at the base of the steel column.
Of the examples, right.
The examples, and that was
Right.
what was, the building I was in had that, but yours is not. Steel column goes right into the ground. Okay.
And kind of different from what we're seeing on the screen here. On the upper right, it looks like you've got the supports that are running,
They're slanty.
along the pitch, I'll say. But in the design that we have, there's a beam that kind of runs against the pitch. Is that accurate?
But in other words,
Yeah, the look is on the right side. The face of it will be very similar to what you'll see in this array. So that it's
So the upper right on page 16, slide 16 here, it's going to look very similar to that?
the face of the structure. You won't see the beams on the bottom sticking out like that, but you'll see the you'll have the steel structure, and then the aluminum, the module on top of that, but they'll blend in very nicely because it's a flush mount.
So there is going to be a beam that goes east to west?
Correct.
Okay. And on the upper left, and I know I'm getting particular here, it looks like the panels overhang the steel structure. That's not the case here. Is that accurate? Okay.
We've interrupted you a lot. Maybe you should,
I'll
the
go
lighting
back.
plan and all
Sure.
that.
That's okay. Maybe David should.
Can we add? Here's a picture of, I can't show it any bigger. Do you see there's a little more detailing on the pole coming off? It's like a V. Can we do a little more detailing on the pole that we see to just make it blend in a little more from the street?
Is there a way to grow vines on it?
Yeah.
There is?
Yes.
Trying to figure out how to send this.
Vines without having a base, you know.
There could be planters hung from this structure.
The living wall?
Yeah.
You know, there's those living walls.
You could hang planters from it?
Yeah, from that edge or that.
Hidden by the asbestos.
Yes, we've discussed hanging planters from the southern edge or the northern edge of the structure to try to,
Dress it.
dress it up
Dress
a
it up
little.
a bit, yeah.
As long as it doesn't grow over onto the panels.
Let's see the photo.
Get wisteria growing.
Like that, something.
Right.
Give it a little more traditional feel on industrial.
Talking about the cross members?
That's pole form, but
Yeah.
like a pole does awnings. They work with older buildings, even though it's a more modernist element.
Look to the stanchions at the Lackawanna Plaza.
Recycle.
But seriously, I mean, if you added some detail to it, maybe it would look a little bit
Less industrial.
not so sterile, not so high tech, not so. I think what we're seeing is or feeling is that it's not a huge structure, but it is certainly it is big enough. I mean, you're parking 6-7 cars underneath it, basically. You can't see it a whole lot from the public street, but you do see it once you come into the parking lot. And going back to my comment earlier about it's not great back there now, but this is not necessarily the best that it will ever be. Hopefully, will improve the look of the parking lot over time. It'll become a more pleasant place. It'll get cleaned up. So just trying to, since you're building something new back there, and you're fixing up the back, if you could add a little bit of something in the details just to make it not look like the Sonic drive-through.
Right.
Even if it might even be just, you see how the building, the parapet has the detail?
Yes.
If you did something like that, turn it upside down and put it around the edge.
Right.
Right.
Even something as simple as that little detail gets it less looking like, a stand for solar panels or as a carport for the building.
You got that? Yeah. Okay. It's understood. So I'll continue. I'll continue to the discussion of lighting, which is slide number 12. Currently, there are 2 wall-mounted lights on the rear elevation of the building. So I'm pointing to one wall-mounted light there at one of the exterior pedestrian doors that leads out from the bluestone coffee shop area. And then there's another light mounted on the wall, on the south wall, next to the rear door to the dry cleaners and next to a door to the stairway. Since we're covering these 6 parking spaces with a carport, we're also proposing to illuminate the area under the carport with very low-level lighting, but lighting level that complies with the township requirements of maintaining 0.5-foot candles throughout the parking lot. So these are LED strips that are mounted on the underside of the roof. So they're very small, small fixtures. Each strip is 0.6 inches high and 1.7 inches wide. So these are hardly visible in the daylight. However, it will provide illumination ranging from high of 1.4-foot candles in this area down to a low of 0.2-foot candles around the perimeter of the property. So that's in addition to the 2 existing wall-mounted lights on the building now. When we went to the DRC and the HPC, it was requested that there be a wall-mounted light placed on the east wall of the building over that private alley. Currently, there's no lighting in that alley, so we're proposing 1 wall-mounted light to be mounted within that alley. Let's see. So now we'll, yes. Yes.
Underneath, will that light be visible from the apartment windows when
No,
it's
this
on?
is
Or
underneath
is it
totally
below?
under the roof of the carport. It will not
So
be
will
visible.
but will that edge where the light is drop below the window line, or will it be visible? I know you won't see the light, but will the
You won't-
glow
Right.
come into the apartment window? If so, how long are the lights going to be on, or is
Okay.
that something that you need to mitigate?
So will the lights be on a timer, or will they be on, I mean...
Because it's the winter. It's more
Correct.
the winter
That's
concern,
right.
I guess.
I would
Right.
put on a timer.
You know, where they'll come on, they might come on earlier than later. You just want, I think you want to mitigate against that light
That's the apartment
infiltrating
windows,
the
correct.
apartments.
Right. And this is all below the level of the carport.
These are electrical
These are electrical.
and not solar powered, for example.
No.
No.
They might eventually get power from that grid, but it's not a direct.
Right. So
Not a
the
direct.
actual LED tape is only 0.5 inches wide and 0.2 inches high, but it will be within a shield that's 1.7 inches wide and 0.6 inches high. So it'll
Right.
look like a strip.
Right, but I know, like, if you have
Yeah.
a light outside your window, even though it's not shining in your window,
Right.
you can still see that light outside your window, and if you don't want that light outside your window...
Right, understood.
You know, so
Yeah.
that's...
Okay. We'll
You
make
need to figure that out. And, I mean, that could be mitigated simply by, you know, having a panel drop down
Correct.
a little bit, you know.
Yeah, there may need to be a shield
Yeah.
On the
on the nearest side to the building.
Right.
Subject to
Agreed.
the height of the bottom of the sill of the windows, that may
Right.
be able to see down there or have light reflected.
Exactly, because you're obstructing their view out of the window into the parking lot anyway. So you might as well make it complete.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Paul, the light fixture in the alleyway,
Yes.
is that going to be facing down or
It'll be
back
facing-
to the rear?
No, it would be facing down. It would be a residential style light fixture facing down just to provide some safety in that parking lot.
Are there any windows in the building next door that that light could reflect into?
None.
There's no windows on that side
No,
at all?
or on this building.
I know
either.
you said this building, no, but
Right.
not the next one. Okay.
Right.
Will that one light provide minimum 0.5-foot candles in that stacked parking area?
We would make sure it does, so we would pick a light fixture to do that. And not much more than that either. I think we'll skip to slide 17. So slide 17 is an enlarged plan of the rear of the property. So as I said, in addition to the carport and restoration of that stair enclosure, the cleanup includes the trash and recycling. I stated before that the trash and recycling is currently in the southwest corner. This is what it looks like now, those 2 bottom photographs. It was a board-on-board fence, and my opinion is that wood fence trash enclosures do not hold up And, the only thing worse is a chain link fence for a trash enclosure. But, so the trash fence that's there will be removed. The trash and recycling will be moved out of that area and moved into this area that's colored green, which is in the center of the rear of the property. So Mr. Schilling stated that he has the need, and he currently uses two dumpsters on wheels in addition to 4 trash cans. Plus he needs an area for cardboard recycling for his business. And that, as I stated before, since the trash and recycling is next to that public alley, the trash and recycling, especially the trash, those dumpsters fill up almost immediately with trash that is not part of 123 Watchung Avenue. Also, the tenants in the building require easy access to the trash and recycling. And then the trash collection companies need easy access to the trash collection. So we've designed 6-foot-high galvanized metal trash and recycling enclosure for the dumpsters and the cans, in addition to a smaller enclosure for the cardboard that lies flat. So the trash and recycling is 17 feet 4 inches by 8 feet 8 inches wide and 6 feet high. And then the cardboard area is 4 foot by 8 foot, but only 2 foot 9 inches high, so it's underneath the window to the dry cleaners, and that's more than Mr. Schilling needs to stack or his flat cardboard within that area. As I said, the 6-foot-high trash enclosure will accommodate the 2 dumpsters plus the 4 trash cans. And then slide 18. Slide 18 shows the 6-foot-high enclosure. So the 6-foot-high enclosure would accommodate the 2 dumpsters plus the 4 trash cans. The 6-foot-high enclosure for the dumpsters would have swinging gates facing the public parking lot, so that the front dumpster could be wheeled out to the trash collection vehicle. There'd be sliding panels on the west and east side of this enclosure, so that the other dumpster could slide out either to the west or to the east. And then the 4 trash can enclosure would have sliding panels on both sides, so that tenants or trash collectors could access the 4 cans within that area. The other, slide number 19, shows the cardboard enclosure. Cardboard enclosure, as I said, it's only 2 foot 9 inches high to be under the sill height of the window, one of the windows to the dry cleaners. And the point is that there'd be swing doors on both sides, so that the flat cardboard could be placed in here and tamped down. This would have a roof over it. The other trash enclosure would not have a roof over it because this is under the carport roof. And then...
Paul, will the trash enclosure be on a concrete pad?
These are shown not to have concrete pads. They're placed on the asphalt paving.
We require them to be...
The township requires a
has to be on a concrete
platform,
pad.
both of them.
We'll do it.
Okay.
So Paul, on page 20,
Okay.
you have examples.
So page 20 shows examples of some of the trash enclosures or successful trash enclosures that we've done in Montclair.
So the one you're proposing is going to be...
So it's similar to either... So these 4 pictures,
how's the roof going to be? Is it going to be a pitched roof?
There's no roof on the 6-foot-high enclosure because it's under the carport.
Okay.
There's a roof, flat roof over the 2-foot-9 enclosure. So this is a flat corrugated metal roof that would slide up on a piano hinge up against the building.
So solid.
Solid roof.
It'll be a solid box then.
Solid box, right.
And this one will be an open box.
And similar to the Dr. Davis's Wellness Center at 316 Orange Road, or 491 Bloomfield Avenue, which is the Vault 491 that does not have a roof. Then we have 50 Upper Montclair Plaza has a arch-shaped roof, since that's open to the air. And the YMCA constructed this one last year or 2 years ago with a pitched roof, and that's a fixed roof, but that's out in the open also. So this is the idea that it's a sturdy construction with the galvanized metal, possibly with wood frame for the corners. So it'd be a dark gray color, similar to, say, the...
But Mr. Sionis, it's not 100% underneath the carport, right? Because there's
the carport is 10 feet 6 inches high, and this is only 6 feet high.
No, what I'm saying is that isn't there a piece of the carport that is exposed the part, there's like a foot or two near the building edge?
That's correct, a foot or
So
two
it's
of the
not,
building.
so some of it is open?
Right, with this area where the 4 trash
Yeah.
cans, about a foot, or 2 feet of it is
2 feet is open.
exposed to the sky right there. That's
So
correct.
shouldn't you put something over the top of that?
That one should have a roof over it since it's not covered.
And it will have a roof over it?
Right.
Okay. So how is that, the tenants' trash collected?
Township.
Oh, the town? So they come to the back and they pick that up? Okay. So did you just, did you say, Mr. Schilling, that all of the businesses use the same garbage collection service?
As far as I know.
Okay. And there's no way that...
They don't have to.
But they do.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
They
They
all,
don't have
they all
to.
do it at this time.
They all do it this time. Wouldn't it make sense, once again, I know I just said this, but to have one container where everybody could use it, they just
Right.
pick up once and you split the cost, yeah.
You gotta figure that out, though. 'cause
But
I would,
you figure it out.
I would love something like that.
Yeah.
It's been in the talking phase for a long time, but it would be a good thing. for
And then you'd
everybody.
get an extra parking spot, wouldn't you? Or maybe.
Yeah.
And we could then,
So
less
maybe
parking
between
in the
now and the
municipal
time
lot.
that you put up the trash enclosure, you can convince your neighbors.
Good luck.
And you'll save that.
Okay, so
Do you want to go into the variance?
yeah, I can go into the variances, but basically, you know, as I've said, this is reorganizing and cleanup of the property. It's repairing or rebuilding that rear stair enclosure and also putting the carport with the solar panels as an initiative to use alternative energy on the property.
You know, another question. The passageway that's on the west side, that's brick,
Yes,
is that public?
that's public.
Is there the possibility of moisture coming off the carport that might create an ice condition on that walkway, you know, during the winter?
The carport's sloped from north to south, so if any ice or water comes off that, it will come to the south over to that driveway there.
So, but
Yeah.
it's actually, okay, so the carport ends at the property line.
But it ends 1.5 feet from this property line. So
From
there's
the property line.
From the property line.
So if you have something come down into that corner, is it gonna puddle in that, because that's impervious surface, right? So if you have water coming out of there, isn't it gonna puddle there and maybe turn to ice?
Well, this area now is paved and it's all sloped towards the public parking lot, the asphalt paving under here.
Right, but you don't have something that has melting snow collecting in that, because theoretically, once you clear the snow out, there's not something that's going to deposit more ice on top of it unless it rains or something like that.
Right.
You know, theoretically. But once that's plowed out, and if you have water melting off of the structure during the day and then freezing overnight, and if that's a public, shouldn't there be maybe something to discourage the water from going there?
We could look at something to discourage the water
You
from
know,
going there, yes.
Related question too, do the roof leaders on the back drain right to the parking area?
No, they're in the front.
Excuse me?
They're in the front of the building.
They're in the front?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was my question about runoff and drainage. There's no gutter on the edge of the carport, correct?
No.
And is there a sense of where it would drain out? It just drains out into the public parking lot, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it runs down the parking lot, and there's a storm drain about maybe 40 feet behind my building in the parking lot, and all the water drains down into that.
Right. And then you said there's an option of potentially snow guards, but that is just so we have a sense, how much would that add to the lower level line? I think it's the south edge of the solar panel carport. Is that an extra foot or two, or just a few inches?
I mean, if you do the snow guards are usually 3 or 4 inches.
Okay.
But I don't know where they would place them on here, but you'd want to have it so to prevent the snow and ice from falling off and
Right.
doing any damage.
Okay, and then the last thing on the carport, the beams, there'll be no guards or protections at the bottom per se for cars. You know, sometimes there'll be the cushions around the bottom. Just, and again, I'm not suggesting one way or the other, just wanted to confirm if there's any plans.
I'm not aware of any plans for that.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, Paul, we have some setback variances and one or two others. Can you address those now?
Sure.
Identify them and address them as you go.
Sure. Most of these were listed in Janice Talley's memo, but there are several variances and a waiver requested for this application. First one is that the carport will have a westerly side yard setback of 1.5 feet and an easterly side yard setback of 1.25 feet, whereas the required side yard setback is either 0 feet or 6 feet. So we're proposing 1.5 and 1.25 instead of 0 or instead of 6. There's also a variance for a rear yard setback that the carport has a proposed rear yard setback of 1.4 feet, and the accessory structure is required to have a rear yard setback of 20 feet. There's a variance for the trash can enclosure. The 4 trash cans, if that's a separate structure from the 2 dumpster enclosure, then that would have a rear yard setback of 13.5 feet, whereas the required rear yard setback is 20 feet. And then the dumpster enclosure right now is shown as having a setback to the south property line, the rear property line of 0 feet, where it's right on the property line, whereas the required rear yard setback for an accessory structure is 20 feet. And then there's a variance in that the parking spaces along the easterly property line are in tandem or stacked design. So in the Montclair ordinance, it states that all parking spaces shall have direct access from an aisle or a street. With tandem spaces, that's not possible. So several of those spaces do not have direct access to a street or an aisle. And then there's a variance in that the first parking stall number 10 within that alley is setback 0. It's located within 10 feet of the front property line. Then the next thing is that the parking spaces are set back 0 feet from the side property line and the rear property line, and the ordinance it's required to be 4 feet from the property line and landscape. This property is 100% paving or building. Then there's a waiver for the, as we discussed, a waiver from the trash and recycling storage areas that they have to have a roof. And that they should have a concrete pad. We've agreed to have these trash and recycling areas on concrete pads, and any of the areas that do not have roofs will have a roof, such as the enclosure with the 4 trash cans. And then, if necessary, we'd require relief from existing impervious surface on the property is 100%. Proposed impervious surface is also 100%, and requirement in this NC zone is 80%. This is an existing condition. It's historically been all paving or building. So in my opinion, the variances, I can justify all of the variances under both the C1 grounds and the C2 grounds. And the C1 grounds is where you look at the traditional hardship variance, which is because of the existing land on the property and the land, the shape of the land. In this case, the building that's been historically on this property since 1926 limits what we could do with the rest of the property. And then under the C2 justification, this is more of a modern or flexible variance, where you look at how this application promotes the purposes of zoning and how the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments. So in all of the dimensional variances, they could be justified under the traditional hardship standard. So it's the lawfully existing building on the property and the lawfully existing rear yard parking area, which takes up almost all of this property since 1926, that controls and limits all of the site improvements. So therefore, that gives rise to practical difficulties, or what they call undue hardship. And then the carport side yard and the rear yard setbacks are limited by the existing building footprint and the rear yard parking area. The trash can enclosure and the dumpster enclosure setbacks are limited by the same features. Parking space setbacks are limited by the same features. It's the existing paved area and the existing building. and the existing and proposed impervious surface of 100% is long-standing. It's been like that probably since 1926. This is one of the very few lots within this block within Watchung Plaza, with the exception of a few properties that have any on-site parking or can provide on-site trash and recycling enclosure, as they showed in the presentation. So alternatively, in the case of the dimensional variances, I can justify it under the C2 criteria, which is sort of the modern flexible standard. And that's where we have to look at how it promotes purposes of zoning under the state municipal land use law. So the project proposes building and property improvements that bring significant upgrades to the property, including, and as we've repeated several times, stripping and repainting the front and back of the building, restoring the wood stair enclosure at the rear of the building, installing for the first time a makeup air vent at the rear of the building to provide better airflow with the Bluestone's coffee shop, reconfiguring and increasing the size of the existing on-site parking spaces, formalizing several tandem or stacked parking spaces that are limited and will be limited to employees only during business hours. We're introducing sturdy and attractive trash can, dumpster, and cardboard enclosures that are further away from the public alley than they've ever been. We're proposing a planter with evergreen planting to screen the view of the private alley and offer the benefit of a landscape feature to the public sidewalk. And then last but certainly not least, the installation of the solar panels that have been discussed quite a bit. So they're on the roof of the existing building below roof parapet, so they won't be visible for solar generated electricity, and also the installation of a carport over the existing on-site parking spaces with solar panels on the carport roof for solar generated electricity. Because of the proposed improvements that I went through quickly, the project promotes the purposes of zoning, and that, number one, it promotes an improved and desirable visual environment, which is zoning purpose I, and I showed you it's a mess back there. It's a mess at many of these properties, but so this will truly promote an improved and desirable visual environment. And number two is it promotes the utilization of renewable energy resources, which is a zoning purpose N. In particular, solar generated electricity is proposed for this part of this building that's clean, self-generated, and self-reliant. It doesn't rely on a utility company. There are other reasons, such as it promotes the general welfare, because we're looking to forward the health and safety of the public. We're protecting the adequate light, air, and open space, promoting the conservation of energy resources. All of the benefit of these policies and the variances requested substantially outweigh the detriment. So in my opinion, there's, sorry for going through quickly, but no substantial detriment to the public good. So the project and the variances will not cause substantial detriment to the public good or to the surrounding properties. The required carport side yard setback of 0 feet, or if we provide a 6-foot setback, is intended to prevent narrow passageways between buildings. So the 6-foot minimum requirement is set up so you don't have a narrow passageway squeezing between buildings. But in this application, there's no building or building addition. The carport is 10 feet 6 inches above the ground. The proposed setbacks reflect the necessary carport design, both to cover the parking and to provide the solar panels that were discussed. And we're providing a limited reasonable setback from adjoining properties. But in this case, the carport's not up against another building. It's not up against the neighboring building. The building to the east ends at Mr. Schilling's building, and the rear or south elevation of the neighboring building is on line with the south elevation of 123 Watchung. And then the west side of the carport, it's separated by the neighboring building to the west by the 10-foot wide brick alley. So it's not on line or adjoining either of the two adjacent buildings. The rear setback of the carport reflects the long existing condition of this on-site parking. So we're basically covering something that's existed for a long time along the southerly or rear property line. And then the carport shields the on-site parking spaces from, as we said, some of the benefits besides the solar panels. It's shielding them from sun, rain, and snow. The same thing with the trash enclosure and the dumpster enclosure, rear yard setbacks. They reflect the long-standing condition that the trash and recycling are located between the back of the building and the rear property line, at least since 2009. The planning memo indicated that there was a photo of trash can storage on the easterly alley from 2009. The applicant has decided to take the trash out of that alley and to move it to the rear property so it's easier access for vehicles collecting the trash, but also he's freeing up neighboring streets from having his staff park on those side streets during the daytime from 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. by at least parking them in tandem on the east side of the building. And also the new enclosures are actually called for in the site plan ordinance of the township. So as I said, or as I showed you, a lot of messy dumpsters within this parking lot. It's not just in this parking lot, all over town that there's dumpsters outside of buildings, but the newest site plan ordinance in Montclair doesn't allow that. It has to have attractive and sturdy trash enclosures with roofs and, as you stated, with concrete pads to make sure they're durable. The on-site parking space setbacks from the rear property line, the side property line, they reflect the same long-standing condition that existing parking spaces are either at or near the property lines, and also that on-site parking is very difficult to provide in established commercial districts, and when it is established on-site in the commercial districts, it's usually pretty close to property lines because parking is so limited and valuable. Let's see. Even though the on-site parking has been reconfigured, we haven't lost any parking spaces. All of the parking spaces we're proposing are now conforming in width. Currently, we've measured these spaces at 8 feet wide. We've increased these all to a minimum of 9 feet in width. The tandem spaces on the eastern property side, eastern side of the property within the alley, they're not typical, but it's not so unusual in Montclair to have some tandem parking spaces. They are valuable, as I stated, so that the employees of Bluestone can park off the street on this property and not be parking in front of houses on either Fairfield Street or North Fullerton Avenue. There are safeguards with the parking that's proposed for this. The stacked parking is limited to employees only. It's coordinated and managed by Bluestone and the employees of Bluestone. It starts when business starts in the morning. It ends when the business closes at, as you said, 3:30. And also we provided a planter with landscaping in it for the first time to block, for two reasons. Number one, for aesthetics, to block the view of any vehicles in the alley from the public sidewalk. And also to prevent any automobile from driving from this alley across the sidewalk on Watchung Avenue. The required impervious surface in the NC zone is 80%. The existing is 100%. It's probably been like this for many years. We've provided the 6-foot-long planter with the evergreen shrubs, the inkberries, and also, in my opinion, the improvements to the building and the property bring benefits to the surrounding properties in the district and should encourage other property owners adjoining the municipal parking lot to follow suit, to do the same thing and join in with their own improvements. Mr. Schilling's taken this on his own to make these improvements. Hopefully other people in this district or in this block will do the same thing. The solar panels we've discussed improvements such as planting on the front edge or the south edge or north edge to try to soften the view of them. We're limiting it to the 8 degrees to make sure that it's not visible from the public parking lot. They're on the edge of the historic district. They're within the historic district. There's no denying that. But they face a parking lot that's not in the district. They can't be seen from Watchung Avenue. The panels cannot, or by pedestrians from within the public parking lot, as long as it's as per the drawing. My opinion, there's no substantial impairment to the zone plan. The project and the variances that are asked for won't cause substantial impairment of the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. In fact, they promote the master plan and the zoning ordinance policies. Sorry, I'm going fast, Janice. So we look back to the 2015 master plan land use element, and in the 2015 master plan, There's an objectives section, and it recommended strengthening neighborhood and commercial centers, promoting more efficient use of parking infrastructure, and encouraging conservation of energy sources. The project does all three of those. Then we follow that up with the 2015 master plan land use element that specifically discussed Watchung Plaza. And in that, it noted there's insufficient parking and there's a parking burden in Watchung Plaza. Most of us know that. The proposed stacked parking under the proposed conditions will enable 3 or 4 more cars not to park in front of houses on Fairfield Street or North Fullerton Avenue, or block stores on the the metered spaces on Watchung Plaza, allowing people to park there to shop in the stores. And then the 2016 master plan reexamination report. So this is the newest one. The 2016 Master Plan Reexamination Report specifically recognized that the municipal land use law was amended in 2009 to include renewable energy facilities such as solar as an inherently beneficial use. In other words, inherently beneficial use is one that serves the public interest by its very existence. I mean, usually we think of churches or hospitals, but in 2009, the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law amended the ordinance to state that solar facilities are an inherently beneficial use. So the project clearly furthers New Jersey's new priorities of wind and solar energy by implementing solar energy for this building, while at the same time, as reflected in the Historic Preservation Commission's report, we're respecting appropriate placement and design. I think we've listed the comments about trying to do something with the design of the columns, and we'll certainly look into that to be tie it into the historic district a bit. But it does implement solar energy and respects the appropriate placement and design for the historic district. And then finally, the dimensional variances are all pretty minor, and they're all reasonable departures from certain provisions of the zoning ordinance. They benefit and encourage surrounding properties, and they enable property upgrades, and the property upgrade are favored by all development regulations. So because of this, I think you could grant the variances that are asked for. I think we could work out the aesthetics for the solar panels on the carport. I firmly believe, and we proved it by the diagrams, that no one is going to see the solar panels on the roof except from a drone. I think we're making aesthetic improvements to this building, including the planter, cleaning up the parking, the trash enclosures, and I'm hoping that other neighbors will follow Mr. Schilling's lead. Is that it? Yeah.
I think you covered everything.
Sorry.
I have just one correction. Your testimony said that the adjacent building on the east side had no windows, that the private alley. It does have windows, so I think the light that you propose there needs to be down, not affect the apartments that are upstairs.
I apologize that I misspoke. And I do see the second floor windows on that. On page 4. Thank you.
Second
Yeah, right.
I have another question about that. You weren't providing the full survey, you know, dimensional survey. Does that building have the one on the corner that we're talking about with the windows that are right adjacent sort of floor? Are there any property rights that are associated with that? I'm just wondering, is there any easement that runs on your property, sir, that might benefit that adjacent building?
I don't know the answer to that. I've seen the property survey, and I don't recall seeing an easement, but I can't represent that. I don't have it here with me. I don't know whether you have a copy of the easement or the
survey.
Survey, Janice Trost. I think it was a 2013.
There's no easement.
Okay.
Oh, you have it?
Just dimensional. There's no.
Are you aware of any easement rights back or forth? He's not aware of that.
Because there are windows there, and also there's a display window. I'm having a hard time with this park because just because you park there for a long time doesn't want to be the right thing. And it is a violation now. So that, there's a solar thing, whatever. But you've got residents above in these 4 spaces. I'll ask our engineer. How many times have you seen 4 tandems in a row back in the bumper complex? You don't see that too often, right?
No, generally all tandem parking is a unique condition, unique to to the site constraints and the use of the property. In this particular case, the four are identified to be exclusive to just the Bluestone Cafe and limited in their use during the day. So the operations of queuing the cars in the morning, first come, first serve, and the removal of those cars all comes in a group as the employees all come off of a shift together. But the stacking.
In my opinion, I don't see 4 cars stacked too often. I see 2. So, and then also when you put that planter in the front, there is a display window in the joint building. I suppose they don't care. If I own that building, I'd be here and say, get that car out of the window, but they're not here. So as you put that planter there, you're actually blocking display window, which potentially is a nice retail view and light into that. So I guess the bottom line is if you can get rid of that first car that's so close to the sidewalk and only have 3, set it back, and then maybe put your planter further back or something. That at least gives some relief. You still have the issue with people living above these people are starting these cars. There's windows there. That would blank wall, I have no issue. So there's apartments upstairs.
Can I take a shot at a response? I think this is an unusual situation. I agree with you. Usually stacking or tandem parking is usually 2. The best analogy I can think of is where you have a driveway where people will have 3, 4 cars in it, and they manage it, and they're able to do it, particularly when they have visitors over. This is a special situation, and we're prepared to live with the conditions. It's employees only. It starts, at 7, it ends at 3:30 or 4. Everything's out of there. No one's going to park there overnight. They manage it. They know how to do it. They've been doing it for years. And have you had any complaints about it?
No. Well, that's a good shot. I think that even though the people that own that building aren't here, I think that these parking spaces devalue that building. Just because there's windows. I mean, if I own the building, I'd be here and say, get the cars out of there because I want to rent my apartments upstairs for more money than I have to be.
I have one more thing to add. This project has been around for about 6 months that I've been involved with it, and I've been over to Bluestone 3 times to be at meetings at Bluestone. The coffee's good, so that's a good place to meet. And every time I've been over there, I've not been able to park in the Watchung Plaza Municipal parking lot. I've had to park either on Fairfield Street or around the corner. And that was part of the idea.
I'm not talking about that. My point is that maybe the owner doesn't care, but I think, and this I'm just having a hard time with this, because we're saying, okay, it's okay to park right in 4 cars, bumper to bumper to bumper, underneath
apartments upstairs. So I have a hard time with that. I see that as, you're devaluing that property. And
Well, I have a question. Where do the employees of the dry cleaner park? I mean, they're not here tonight. I suppose, Mr. Owen, you're representing them as well?
Well, there are only 2 drivers there, and they have two spaces right behind their business.
Do you represent them as well?
Well, I represent the entity Schilling Choi, okay, and I understand that the ownership is 50% Mr. Schilling and the owners of the dry cleaners when you finally cut down the individuals under the entities. I've not had any communications with them. I have to rely upon Mr. Schilling to tell us what their transportation needs are. I think he just, I don't know otherwise.
Okay.
I don't care where they park. I'm saying any cars who park, we're talking about any cars there. That's my point. Is that
I understand, but I was just curious because Mr. Sionis made a big point of the employees are not taking up spots on Fairfield Street and the surrounding neighbors, but there's been no mention of the dry cleaner or Mr. Chow since you've been here. The 8 spot, there's 3 apartments?
4 apartments.
4? So there's 8 spots, so does each apartment get 2 spots?
Currently, there are only 4 cars for all the apartments.
Generally, it's like 1 car per apartment at this time.
One apartment has 2 cars, 2 drivers with 2 cars, and the other ones have 1 car each.
Okay. So so those other spots will just be empty?
At times. You mean during the day?
Or at night. I mean, can your employees park there as well? If you don't need all those spots?
My employees get there before before the tenants leave, generally.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, I mean, everybody's got a different story. One woman doesn't work. Her car is
Car's there all the
always
time.
there.
Yeah.
Somebody else commutes and they leave their car.
Yeah.
But it's different kind of every day.
Right. But what I'm getting at is, if you don't use all those spots, maybe we could eliminate one of the spots in the alleyway or all the spots in the alleyway and use up your new 8 spots. Maybe. It's just a thought.
Well, I think you need to explain the importance of the tandem parking spaces in the alley. You're the guy that owns the business and runs it, and we've tried to articulate it for the board, but, how important are those spaces?
Well, I mean, it's 4 spaces. We actually have, on the weekends, we have 13 or 14 people working. It helps relieve some of it. When the tenants aren't there, we do use some of their spaces, and then it gets challenging with the rest. I don't like anybody parking at the metered spaces because that's for the customers. So the people that can't use spaces at the building at any given time have to do this thing where you can park 2 hours here, and then you can park 3 hours there, and then you can move over here, and it's this thing that goes on all day. Because there really isn't any parking in that neighborhood where you could just leave a car. Yeah, you can't leave a car there, and again, I don't want to take up customer parking. That's the number one complaint I get from my customers.
Mm-hmm.
I would come more often, or I didn't come last week, or I did this, because there's just no place to park.
Sure, I know, and with the elimination of not being able to park across the street at the, because I've done that in the past. But on a personal note, Mr. Schilling, and I'm just curious. This is quite a big expense, putting this structure up, having hiring an architect, an attorney, and putting up the solar panels. Is it really that cost effective? I mean, once you make back all your money from all your investment in all of this, are you really going to? Have you done the numbers? I mean, is the savings that substantial for the solar panels?
They don't make sense, but
I mean, I'm just curious because, like Ms. Laughlin said, I'm not a solar panel expert.
The way that I've looked at this thing is that some people believe in science and some people don't believe in science. But if you believe in science, we're facing a catastrophe on this planet. If I get a payback on this, it won't be until I'm long retired or worse.
Right.
So I'm not really doing it for the money. I just thought it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some people believe in science, some people don't. But if you do, we have to take this seriously. We have to take it seriously now.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion, and that's why I'm doing it, basically.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I understand you correctly that those tandem spaces after about 3 o'clock they're not going to be used at all?
No, there's nobody in there after 3:30.
The restaurant's not open for dinner,
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
I
it's
understand
yeah.
that. Is that monitored in any way? Can people just go in there and?
I've never seen it happen. I've been there 21 years.
I think at one of the reviews we talked about, we don't want to increase signage, but we talked about it's acceptable to have some modest signage saying that it's for employees only and that it is not, to be used by the public. We could do something like that. It is a limited time frame, and we're ready to have those as conditions. Employees, clear by 4 p.m., let's be safe. It's not parking for the public. And that's how valuable those spots are. I think he articulated that for you.
And that would follow the building if it changed hands?
It might not, because the conditions might not match up. You might have a different tenant there, and if conditions can't be upheld, then the parking can't be upheld. But for this particular tenant who's here now, Bluestone, it would have to adhere to those conditions, and it can do it. It's represented that it can. If Harvey sells the building and someone else comes in, and they want to use it for public parking, or they want to use it at different hours, the conditions can be challenged, and you can say, we didn't approve that.
That change would start with a zoning application. So as any other entity came to put in some other commercial use, it would file suit to a zoning application, the zoning officer, at which point it could be redirected to the board based on not being able to conform with that.
I would say if another tenant came in and it could limit it to employee parking and limit it to the hours, it would be within the conditions. But if someone starts to abuse the conditions, blow the whistle on it. That's what we always do.
It's hard to find out, but again, this is really, I look at this in perpetuity. Having this and will happen legitimizes, I mean, you know, these cars have been there a long time, no one's complaining, so you might say, well, let's not worry about it because no one's complaining. But my problem is that now I'm looking at it. I wasn't looking at it, so it was a big deal, but now I'm looking at it. So now I have to make a decision, and it just doesn't feel right to me that you would actually allow cars to park. I walk home down the street, I see them all the time. It never bothered me. But now you're asking me, should it be planned? And I don't think it should be planned.
Even though there's such difficulty parking in that area?
I don't care about that.
You don't care about that? I mean, what about our businesses?
If that were my building, I would have a problem with, but they don't. But maybe the next owner would. I'm just saying from a purely design standpoint, and having 4 cars parking underneath bedroom windows in between buildings is Mickey Mouse. And I don't know, I apologize. I really, I'm having a hard time. It's not, now if you ask me, I say, fine, do whatever you want. But now that you're asking me, that's what I feel.
I would think you'd have the same problem in residential areas when you have driveways between houses. And you have a driveway and you don't necessarily pull all the way. No, I'm talking about the driveway right beside the house.
But when is your neighbor on zero setback? Usually there's a fixed.
No, it's your own driveway. It's your own driveway. And you're doing the same, that's his driveway. That's his.
Depends on what neighborhood you live in.
Right.
Depends on what neighborhood you
A
live in.
lot of neighborhoods where the driveway is right next to the
Right next to the house.
That's my
Yeah,
own
but
car, my own property. I'm talking about, you know.
Well, that's his property.
I kind of disagree. I think that we should do what we can to promote our businesses and help the parking situation, and I think they've come up with a good plan for this particular restaurant. Yeah, it's a little odd and it's a little congested, but it's helping that particular lot and the people who want to use take advantage of the services that they provide. So I wouldn't have a problem with this.
Sure. How many parking spaces are required?
I think the answer is that none are required because the building was constructed in 1926 with these 2 commercial spaces. I have this recollection that at one time it was 3 commercial spaces, but it's the same area, and the 4 apartments have been there since 1926. So that would have been before zoning. Now the parking came up over time. We're also not doing anything under 347-101 to trigger parking because we're not adding an addition to a building. We're not changing to a more intensive use. So I think that the parking that's there, we're just trying to preserve it. And we're obviously also using shared parking principles, which everybody's trying to do these days. But I don't think there's a technical requirement.
That's where I have a little bit of a hard time with the hardship argument, is that these are really for convenience.
As I was putting some of this together, I thought that the hardship argument did not provide to the stacked parking or to the parking space 10 feet within the front of the property line, so I agree with you on that. However, I think it easily fits within the C2 argument. I count 7 or 8 goals of zoning that this project brings in. I think the most important ones are the improvement of the visual environment and the use of renewable solar energy. But there, it's also, there's another one, the efficient use of land, zoning purpose M. And that's what we're trying to do here. You've got a building and existing paved parking that makes this lot 100% impervious, and we have to kind of deal with it.
Very much beyond the...
I agree with you on the C1. I think it's a little bit more challenging argument.
Yeah, I don't really buy it because I think it's more for convenience.
At least we have C2.
That I don't disagree with.
Mr. Schilling, is there a rodent problem in the parking lot? with the trash? Like, are there mice and rats? Have you seen them over the 21
Over
years?
20 years?
In the parking lot.
Yeah, I would say not recently, but certainly from time to time in the back
Right.
parking lot.
Yeah, at night or, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a lot of businesses, a lot of dumpsters, a lot of stuff
Food,
going on.
leftover foods from the, not just your restaurant, but there's others.
Not
yeah.
only the restaurants, but people have a habit of dropping stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So, yeah, there have been times
Yeah.
when there have been rodents and whatnot. I've been pretty controlled recently from what I can see. You know, I know my business, and I imagine any food business, you have to have
Sure.
exterminators come in at least once a month, and
Right.
they do their thing. And
Right.
it's been-
Well, that's inside the, but in the parking, you know, in the outside where you keep your trash.
Yeah, like I said, over the 21 years, I mean,
You've
you
seen,
you see everything at some point or another over 20 years. But,
right.
It hasn't been
Yeah.
an issue lately.
Okay.
Are you, after you construct the carport, are you repaving the entire area?
No, you mean those 8 spots, 7 or 8
Yes.
spots? Yeah, they were redone just a couple years ago. So we don't have any plans, unless they get beat up in the construction, we might have to do something, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
I want to go back to the roof drainage a little bit. The rear roof for the stairwell, where does that drain?
Where is it currently drain?
There's a gutter up there, and it comes down a leader down the side of the building and just goes into the parking lot.
So, okay, so it doesn't, so not everything drains off to the front in those scuffers that are shown in the photos. There's some
Yeah,
drainage.
I mean, the big roof, the big H-shaped roof goes into the front, and then that little, I guess it's like 7 by 14 feet or something. That roof does drain to the back.
And how about the little pieces of the not part of the H, those small roofs in between, where do they drain to?
They drain into the alleys, both alleys.
Okay,
on either side.
so both the public and the private alleys.
I believe, I mean, don't quote me, I believe, I know the private, I know our alley definitely has a gutter that goes down there. I imagine it has to, I don't know where else it could go.
I think slide 4 shows there's one in the public alley as well.
Yeah, I don't know where else it could go. It must.
Could it be directed somewhere that's not a public thoroughfare or a walkway or a parking area?
I'm not sure how, but
I think an engineer could
Yeah.
probably find a nice way to do it, because I have a big concern, I've seen it around town where, especially in the wintertime, you get nice sun on the roof, everything melts, and then it forms a puddle right on the sidewalk, and either it freezes almost on contact or it freezes overnight and creates a safety hazard.
Okay, I mean, I never thought of it before, but I'm sure we could do something.
Okay, you will do something. It's maybe what I'm hearing?
We'll do something.
Perfect, thank you. Couple of other questions. On the window question regarding the private alley on the east side, did we decide there are first floor windows or just second floor windows? There's first floor.
First floor windows are bay.
Because that's kind of what I was seeing in the photo.
Yep, the first floor windows are commercial space, it looks like.
Okay.
It's the second floor windows I would be concerned about.
Right, you can see in slide 6 are the second floor windows when I misspoke before.
And then where do tenants, the residential tenants, put their recyclables?
We had separate bins for those, but I'm going to, I think I have enough, I have a commingling, I pay my trash company to take my recycling as well, and I think we have enough capacity to absorb whatever the tenants have. So I'm going to have the tenants put it in my recycling.
Okay, so is it one dumpster is for trash and the other dumpster is for
Yeah.
recycling?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. I have another question.
So getting back to what Tony has brought up, and what Steve said about driveways, to me, this is not a driveway. This is an alley, and that's what we have been referencing it as an alley. And on slide 6, the cars are parked closer to the right side to make a little walkway to the side so folks can get by.
Get out of their car.
To get out of their car, right. It's an alley. It's not a driveway. And
That's the problem. I mean,
it's not a driveway.
just, and I know I'm sensitive to the fact that we have to shorten the parking, but now that you ask, I have to, I'm not really, the solar thing is okay, I guess. The only thing I like about the solar is that it goes beyond the building. I was going to ask Paul, if the solar panel does that need to architecturally or totally improvement, so that you've got that cantilever piece that
That bothers me the most.
you could somehow take those 6 or 9 panels and
Move it over.
Well, we're going to have to recall Mr. Kelly again to
Right.
address that for you.
I'm just asking the architectural question.
Yeah.
Do you think it'd be architecturally more appropriate to have the carport sort of line up?
Right.
To line up, yes.
Right.
Non-architectural, there's a non-architectural
Right.
reason.
Right.
I'm asking the architect.
Well, visually, yes, it would look better, but we'll hear from
There you go.
our solar expert why he needed that extra space.
Mess up his parking.
When Harvey, the owner, reached out to me, just wanted to, as you know, try to get as much of the electric bill as possible, and also provide, reduce carbon footprint as much as possible also. And so so we decided to use just the back footprint as it is right now, along the property lines, just to try to increase the system size.
It's either, depending on what it is, it's either 6 or 9 more panels. It's 6 to 9 more on the roof than you have the home free. And you save on the construction, all that steel, and so it comes down below.
No, we can't. Because
You can't put 6 to 9 more panels on the roof?
no, we prefer to put them on the roof as opposed to a carport. And in fact, if we could fit more on the roof, we'd add them because we're not eliminating the electric bill.
Then maybe just have a little bit less power generation. It's still good, but just not quite. It might be 4% less power, so that we achieve, 5%.
No, probably be about for the entire system, it'd probably be about 10%.
I have a quick question about the solar power. Is the solar power for the building?
It's for the restaurant.
Is this for the restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what about the dry cleaner? Just the restaurant?
Just the restaurant. 80%.
Where are the dry clean? I don't.
Cleaners.
Yeah,
I thought it was for the whole building and not the tenants.
Is it that you need more panels in order to generate enough electricity?
Well, yeah, I mean, as the system stands now, it'll cover 80% of the restaurant's power. And the restaurant's paying for it entirely.
That's right.
So there you go. That makes sense.
That's interesting.
Okay.
Mr. Sionis, when you update the cardboard enclosure to have a concrete base, does that eliminate the need for a cedar floorboard?
Cedar floorboard.
I guess my concern, if the cedar's, it's raining in that area.
Right.
Is that going to start rotting out?
Right, we would not have the cedar, a cedar floorboard if there's a concrete floor.
Okay. And are there going to be any issues with the cardboard now getting wet?
No. No.
I had one other question. I can't remember what it is now.
So out of 97 panels, removing 6 panels is going to reduce the production by 10%.
9, we'd have to remove 9 of them I believe we'd have to remove 9 of them.
Probably have to have you a little bit closer to the mic, or you can grab the handheld off the stand there if you like.
Why would you have to remove 9? I thought it looks more like 6 to me to get it to line up.
I would let the architect answer it. I was under the impression that
Maybe
2.5 panels would overhang.
Mr. Sionis, if you could put slide 13 up. Sure. while you're pulling that up, I know my question was, I was hoping, Mr. Sionis, you could go through Mr. Vuich's, did I get it right? Vuich's memo.
Both correct,
Perfect.
Slide 13 is up.
It actually looks like there's a slight discrepancy between what you see on this slide 13 and figure 3 of A3 in your plan set. Looks like in the plan set, the existing roof and solar panel plan, looks like it shows a slight offset on the left side of the building before the panels start in the rear, and then that creates a slight offset of the panels 7, 8, and 9 to the right side.
I see that. Yes. So I think we should
Just comparing between the two plans, knowing the discrepancy, it wouldn't be clear if without dimensioning.
So I
to
guess
identify whether they can align up exactly by panel width.
Well, it looks like if you're on the west side, it looks like that's where that shift is, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Right,
understand,
exactly.
and I don't understand why the shift's there, because the pictures that you're showing show the panels covering the entire roof.
Oh, I might be able to
On
answer
the
it.
illustration.
Because it's
So that's-
supposed to be 1.5 or 1.6 feet off the property line,
Exactly.
so I think that's why in the plan set, you see the shift. I don't know why there's no shift in slide 13.
Originally, when we applied to the DRC and the HBC, it wasn't shifted to the east. It lined up on the west side of the building. So this solar panel plan doesn't reflect the, as you said, on drawing A3, item 3. Item 3 is correct on A3. So the slide number 13 doesn't have the shift.
And again, the shift is because...
We slid everything over when we changed the, originally the trash and recycling enclosures were not in the center. They were over to where they are now. And in the initial review, it was suggested we get them away from the public alley. So when we shifted the trash and recycling to the center, we had to shift the entire carport over to the east slightly.
You had to shift the carport to the east. That still doesn't make sense. You're shifting the little box. You're shifting the huge structure because of the little box that you're putting under it.
But because we're keeping the columns on line with the stripes of the parking spaces.
So move the stripes of the parking spaces. Why can't you?
Well, they're not repaving.
No, it
They're
doesn't
not-
have
they're
it.
not striped. They're not striped right now.
Yeah,
anyway.
they're restriping, I think.
Right, we're restriping. We are striping.
Or
Why
striping.
Why
not
can't you
striping.
move the stripes?
We did move the stripes. So the point is that the slide.
I know.
Doesn't-
I understand
yeah,
why
okay.
there's a discrepancy.
Correct.
What I'm saying is, why can't it line up? Why do you have to shift the whole structure? Why aren't you shifting the paint and the
Got it, right. And the structure to everything to the left, correct.
trash structure?
Right.
Why you that
And then it would reflect slide 13.
to make it line up?
Correct.
And so then, if you cut off the cantilever extension, you'd lose 6 panels.
But does that work?
Which would make it look better from the back, because it would be more symmetric.
Yes. And the front.
Get 6 up there.
Right, you wouldn't see an overhang looking down as you pass by.
The alley, the alley.
Objection is because of what looks like from out here. That's the objection to. I know, but they want to eliminate this because people on the sidewalk can see it. That's the reason.
So that this gentleman
Doesn't make
can go
any
on with what he's doing, but if there's ever a dispute with, let's say, a new owner next door saying, you don't have a right to do it, I'm just wondering if there's some other medium level.
Can we tie the parking to the use?
Tie it some other way rather than be this,
In a sense, it is tied to the use, because you said earlier, if a different use comes in, they would have to come back before a board or the zoning law.
Or a different use that has different times of operation.
Yeah.
It's the time of operation. I think that it's not the use itself.
So this variance, I thought the variance goes with the land.
But the condition, I think what we're talking about was conditioning it to allowing only employee parking and only until 3 p.m. or 4 p.m.
I think 4 p.m. was
This is what I'm
worried about.
Someone else owns that building, and there's people living up there, and you got 4 cars parked there. If they say this is bad, I don't like it, I don't want the owner of this building to say, tough luck. I have every single legal right to do this. So right now, they've been going along, they're probably good neighbors, no one really cares. So I'm just saying, legally, is there a way to not give some sort of right in perpetuity to park spaces there? But if all of a sudden this building wanted to undergo an improvement, I'm just...
But it's his property. It's his property.
No, we're talking about the...
Well, we'd be granting a variance to allow them to park. And so that's, otherwise, because legally speaking, according to current zoning, he can't park there. In this particular piece of property. There are other properties where you could park right up against the property line, I suppose, and they're probably grandfathered properties, you know, but according to current zoning, you can't park that close to the property line, and it would require a variance.
Right.
So it's not just, oh, well, it's his property, you can't deny him that right, because he can use his property, you know, he can park there as long as it's X number of feet away, and he has a really narrow car, you know.
Okay, so let me try something else, because I appreciate what your concern is, and we're trying to explain why the parking is very important for the business. What if we limited the parking in the alley to so long as Bluestone is operating its business in the building? Then when that business goes, then there's no more parking in the alley unless there's a new application to you for it.
How would we formalize that?
We would simply say in the resolution as a condition what I just said.
And that would, does that,
reach you in the middle.
okay, but let's go back to a thing that we explored with a recent application that we had.
Yes. Okay.
Notice to the future property owner.
What, you know, you're going to have this problem.
So we would need to either file, we have to require you to file the resolution with the county, because that's how we addressed it in the other.
I think that's what you do. I think all land use applications have this problem. You know,
well, some are more, right, but some are more critical than others. There are some conditions that are not going to make a difference to the purchaser, and there are others that will. And since we're talking about parking,
doesn't sound like Mr. Owen's objecting to
no.
recording
doesn't
the
sound
resolution.
Like he is.
We would basically just file the resolution with the county, and then the purchaser of the property would know for sure, whether you remembered to disclose it or not, that the parking in the alley ended with the end of the Bluestone business. Then you get
what do you think about that, Tony?
Then you get the...
I think that's
reasonable.
Well, I get the heart of the issue is if the neighboring building, let's say someone buys the neighboring building and says, why are you parking there? Do you have a right? I mean, you know, when we've given a variance to park underneath the windows, I think it really would impair. If I owned it, I'd say I would rather not have the cars there. And if I went to try and have the cars eliminated and someone said no, the planning board gave that property the right to park 4 cars underneath those windows in perpetuity. So,
well, we're not going to do it in perpetuity.
At this point, he's not asking.
Okay, so as long as you, so when you personally, you're talking about when he personally sells the business. Suppose Bluestone goes on for another 20 years with another owner. What's that?
That was the question I had. If he, for example, he keeps the building but sells the business, and the business opens under a different name.
Yeah. What do you do?
How does that affect your midpoint, Mr. Owen?
You know, I was not foreseeing that. I was foreseeing that as long as Mr. Schilling is operating the restaurant, he would agree that...
Well, that's what we're saying, but he's saying that what if he stops operating the restaurant but continues owning the building?
I understand. So Harvey decides that he's not going to operate the restaurant anymore, but the name remains Bluestone, and Mr. Smith comes in and he continues to operate Bluestone. I mean, I'm trying to find a way a compromise here. I sense that some of you think this is a good thing to do, and some of you are struggling with it. I'm just trying to get to a midpoint. It's not a perfect world.
Right, well, that's what we're still trying to
You park it now, you have for a long time, so you can just keep doing what you're doing.
Well, no, then the issue is, if we're not approving it as part of the site plan, he doesn't have the right to park there.
He doesn't have it now.
I know.
Yeah.
You're clear, he doesn't have it right now, he's
So
in
if you called
violation.
code enforcement tomorrow,
It's a
they
violation.
would write a violation for him.
But no one has.
That's true.
Well, quite frankly,
Now that we brought it to everyone's
There was
attention.
there was nobody parking there. The parking in that location didn't start until after 2009. So it's not like it's, when you look at historical photos, you can see that that alley was not used for parking. It's relatively recently, probably within the past 10 years, that it's been used for parking.
I think it was more than 10 years.
I guess
I
you-
remember we were always doing that.
Not according to the historic photos, it doesn't show any parking in that area, in that alley. And it was never approved as part of a site plan. So,
I don't know when the photo, what time it was, what time of day it was taken, when it was taken, and because I think we've pretty much always done that. My memory is that we've always done it unless, I've been there since 1998, and I thought we always did, but maybe I'm not remembering something, but it's been more than 10 years for sure.
okay.
I guess where I'm coming in now, I hear all this. You keep doing it, and then two people, let's say if someone else has a problem with it, you guys work it out, rather than just granting the variance. It just seems like it's working now, we'll continue to work. It sounds awfully simplistic, but that's kind of.
You have to take it off the plans. If that's the way you feel, that they'd have to remove it from the plans.
And remove it as a variance and just approve the rest,
Yeah.
perhaps?
But now that can of worms has been opened and it's not cricket, it's not legal, can we do that?
And we don't want to recommend
Yeah, I know.
that applicants
To
be doing things
turn a
that they're
blind
not
eye.
permitted to do. I would be more comfortable with giving him the limited right. And that if somebody comes in with a new owner, that it has to be, the issue of parking in that alleyway has to be revisited. Your example about if somebody buys the building with the cars parked there and decides that they don't like it, well, if they bought the building with the cars parked there, they knew they were there. And in my opinion, I have no sympathy for people who buy something with an existing condition and then complain about the condition once they get there. I think that person, if it was such a big deal to them, that they wouldn't buy the property, So I think I would be more willing to do the limited condition, because I do see a value in providing the off-street parking for the employees, and that I don't see the hazard, because it's not an exceptionally narrow space, and the limited exhaust that's going to come up from a car starting is going to be carried out. It's an open space, it's just in between. It's 9 feet between the buildings, and I've lived in houses in Montclair that had less than 9 feet between the houses that the driveway ran through, because we don't allow parking on the street overnight. In fact, I own a house that has less than 9 feet parking on the side of it. Fortunately, there's another driveway on the other side of my house, on that house, so it's not a building. But the people who live in the house, my house, the car is parked right up against the side of the house. So,
Where the exhaust system for the dry cleaner, like the chemicals that come out of the dry cleaner, are they in the back of the building? Or are they on the side of the building? Do you know? I know it's
Is
not
it
your
done on the
business.
premises? Maybe the cleaning is not done on the premises.
No,
Yeah.
they do some kind of organic.
Yeah, he has an
cleaning.
organic system. He doesn't use the Perco, whatever.
Yeah, he doesn't use
use
PERC
that
anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
They would
some
have
kind of
to
an organic
exhaust it.
system.
It's
but-
it's a carbon system, I think.
There's state regulations.
Yeah, okay.
Do we have any more questions of the applicant? Mr.
Yeah, the one.
Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the one thing we didn't address in Mr. Vuich's letter was the bollard, the potential of putting bollards behind the landscape screen. And Mr. Vuich, if you want to go into anything else.
Listening to their testimony, I hadn't brought it up based on the curb stop that was also proposed in that area to prevent the cars from impacting the planter.
Wheel stop, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
wheel
what I
stop.
thought.
I don't have an objection to the use of the wheel stop as in lieu of a bollard in that location. It provides actually a little more access with the 3.5 feet on the side of the planter to access from the front and into that area. And having light back there, I wouldn't see an issue with vagrancy for somebody coming off the street and hiding in that area. It's a little smoker's alley of sorts. And I'm comfortable with the way it's designed in regards to preventing cars from going through into the sidewalk area.
Thank you.
So is it time for a motion?
Well, technically, we have to allow Mr. Owen the opportunity, to sum up, although I don't know what he could possibly say that Mr. Sionis hasn't already said at least once.
Chair, if I may, just one thing I wanted to address.
Sure.
We were discussing the construction of the carport and setting the foundations. We were discussing how they were going to be placed, and I think we kind of got into the discussion, then we moved on to some other points. I would expect that you're going to have to lift them in with heavy yellow iron, whether with the CAT vehicle or with some kind of crane. To do so, I don't see any way of doing that from the subject property. I think that's going to have to come from the municipal parking lot in the rear.
Right.
For that reason, I would look to condition for a temporary construction access permit.
Yeah, I think they have to
agreement between
work.
the municipality and. Yeah.
They have to work that out with the town,
I
definitely.
think it's the same way it is. We see it all over the place. The good news I heard tonight was 1 week to build it, so I think that's pretty good.
So I mean, I would expect they're going to need it.
We'll list it as a.
They'll need a crane permit to do it anyway.
Or at least whatever way that they wind up obstructing the traffic in the public parking lot, they'll have to get the appropriate permission from the town in order to do whatever that may be. Sure. If it's by helicopter or drone or crane or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're going to need a crane. I think they can work with a CAT.
Yeah.
Because it'll come in on a flatbed, and then they'll CAT it in place. Pretty big size CAT, but enough to get it up right with an arm.
Yeah, or a crane that's on the flatbed.
Small crane, exactly.
Yeah.
A small crane on the flatbed, right? Exactly. Typical steel delivery crane.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
I guess that would also go for maybe closing off that public alleyway for a certain period of time as well.
Yeah.
Safety reasons.
Yeah, for safety with the crane permit, and when they're pulling overhead, they would be blocking that access with flaggers.
Right.
That's just standard construction safety.
I would agree. Just
And
want
then
to put it on the record.
Losing the revenue that the parking meters would have during that obstruction, I guess, is part of the town takes that into consideration? Okay.
I would think so, I would hope so.
I hope so, too.
I didn't follow that, I'm sorry.
If as part of the permitting process for the town, that they would take into account the fact that they would be losing revenue if the parking lot is closed. From the meters, right. But that should be worked out with the town. We'll put a condition in that they have to comply with the town's, requirements.
For a permit
for permitting
for a
and
permit to build it.
For permit to build it and the construction process.
Very thorough.
So to answer your question, I think Mr. Owen indicated he didn't have anything to add.
I don't have, the first thing is I don't have any more witnesses to call. You've heard from our 3 witnesses. I think that you thoroughly discussed the project. I think Paul Sionis went through the variance material very thoroughly, so it's for you now to decide what you want to do.
So in answer to your question, yes, it is time.
And I would also
talk about motions.
Yes.
Do we have
what I was
public?
Gonna say.
We don't have any public, do we? That's why I skipped it, because I didn't see any. I see the applicant and I see the applicant's witnesses, and that's it. And I see the press. And then there's us.
Any comments from the press?
Comments from the public? See none.
There being no comments from the public, I guess we can, it's time to talk about motions.
So can I propose a motion to
You
accept this
certainly can
application?
propose, yes, if you would like.
Subject to conditions that I hope Arthur can summarize for us.
I'm happy to review them as I have them. First of all, the bollards will be removed at the rear and wheel stops will be employed at that location. I guess we're, what, 2 bollards back there?
Correct.
Space is 3 and 4.
Okay. This one, I'm just going to say it as I wrote it. It's not going to make a lot of sense, but should the solar panels be able to be seen, the applicant will supply revised drawings that will show, or that will make it so that, and I guess I'm not clear on that.
So in the event that construction requires that the panels be installed in such a way that they are visible from the street, visible that the panels on both rooftops, either rooftops, are visible from the street, contrary to what the sight of line drawings
When you say
demonstrate.
street, are you speaking about?
I'm talking about, we have the sight of line, we have the line of sight, rather, drawings that show from X distances how it's visible.
Street or lot.
Public view, just say visible from the public.
Public right-of-way.
All we're saying is more
Right,
visible.
more visible, right.
May I suggest that if the construction deviates from the Sionis plans, that then you state your conclusion that revised drawings shall be submitted?
Revised drawings, and that the revised drawings have to demonstrate that the panels are not more visible than the original plan.
Will that require correction, not just drawing?
Right, well, the drawings are as-built drawings, or not as-built, but as
actually, the
construction drawings. Right.
Very detailed drawings. If they vary from the Sionis plans, then we have to...
And they have to build according to the construction drawings.
So they have to then resubmit drawings.
First, to demonstrate, before they do anything, to demonstrate.
Because the way this is written, they could just put in new construction drawings into the building department. Right. And then just proceed with that.
Well, the building department has to satisfy itself that it meets the conditions of the resolution.
They don't check our resolutions.
But they're always referred over to Janice, and she'll check them.
Yeah.
Janice will check.
But again, I'm sure that they did the same, if it's 8%.
If it's 8% and 97 feet, then it's good. If it's not, then you don't get the permit.
But I thought we were talking about after the build.
Yes. Yes.
No, we're talking about, I think what happens is that in what we've seen in other projects is that when we have a plan that's submitted by the architect and by the engineer, or I guess by the engineer to a point, but when they actually go to build it, they see they can't build it that way. So they have to redraw the plan. And so that's what we want to trigger it being resubmitted, because the redrawn,
So in any event, it's before construction?
has to be before construction,
See,
yes.
I understood it differently from Mr. Schwartz.
That's A. I'm glad you brought that up. That's A.
But it also has to.
Planning stage,
I don't disagree.
they're going to realize that they can't adhere to the line of sight angles they've suggested.
Right.
But now B is the correction to that. If that is indeed
It has
the
to
case.
be. It has to be corrected so that it doesn't present a condition that's any worse than the original drawing.
What I'm suggesting is that what would normally happen is in a construction, no one would be focused on line of sight, visualized views of these panels from the street. The building department would not go in there focused on that. They'd go in whether it was built correctly and
That's why I wanted to. That's why I was suggesting that the applicant has to resubmit the line of sight drawings with the new dimension, whatever they are, to demonstrate through those drawings that as when you build it, you won't be able to see it when you're building it to the revised.
So if indeed it's showing that they can't build it as proposed,
Right.
that you now can see it, don't we have to have language in there that they will now remediate in some shape or form?
Well, they'd have to come back to the, they'd have to
Revisions.
revise the plans or come back to the board if it's been.
So maybe we have to make it a little bit more
Let me just
wordy than we would ordinarily, but I think, but
let me just suggest that they won't pick it up in the construction necessarily. And what will happen is that it will be built and installed, and then it will possibly be determined,
so if we add to what we've said, just to make sure that even once it's built, it still has to comply, it still has to be,
yes.
You still can't see it, and they will have to correct it if you can.
And the question is, do you want to now
Was it-
delineate what the correction should be?
And the standard is, we've been presented with drawings that say from this distance, from that distance, you can't see it, and we find that acceptable. So they have to demonstrate that at a minimum, that with the new, that you still can't see it. However it is that they've adjusted it or reconfigured it somehow so that you can't see it. If that means making it less panels, it means making it less panels. If it's constructed and you can see it, they have to remediate it. So add that on to it just for clarity.
Do you want an as-built drawing after
Well, they have
they're
to,
installed?
don't they have to submit an as-built?
They do? Okay.
And two-dimensional, though. 2D plan as built.
It's not going to be
The
flat.
concern would be, relative to construction, the concern may be that when they set the foundations, the height of the I-beams differs and either create a higher, which would probably be beneficial, or to the sight line, or worse, lower height. The key dimensions to the standard that we're going to impose is 10-foot 6 height, minimum clear on the carport, which at an 8% angle, which then creates a nominal thickness of what's being installed as a solar panel to provide the edge, the top edge, 10-6 nominal to something for the line of sight that's shown on the drawings.
Good.
So
So
there
we're gonna
should be a concern
language
for
here,
yeah,
but
there
I
should be a
think
concern for
You understand what we're after?
yeah, no problem. Perfect.
All right. Mr. Owen, you and I can work that through.
This will
Absolutely. Yeah, the criticality of the 10.6, be mindful, is the height for clearance of a vehicle that may pull into that space. So that's absolutely critical.
We haven't
aside
gotten to
from
that.
this
I
line of
think they
sight.
are.
A box truck.
10.6, right, 10.6 clearance.
Right, well, that's a requirement.
Back
They
to
said
the
that they were.
conditions, the applicant has agreed to that it will be dark
And the lighting,
gray
they talked about the lighting.
as far as the construction, the steel goes.
And that's for the steel of the trash enclosures along with steel of the carport, yes?
Right,
Okay.
all the metal finishes.
Everything is dark gray back there. And I wasn't sure how to word this, but the discussion about additional snow, the applicant has to be able to show that there's not going to be any additional snow accumulation under the lower part of the port, so to speak. Is that something you want to?
So how about if the snow sheds from the carport into the municipal lot, the applicant will clean it up?
Personally.
What?
That's what he said.
And do you want to require the snow guards also?
No,
Art,
we'll
do you want
allow
to
it.
require snow guards on the roof?
Yeah,
I think that's important.
You want to put a snow guard in?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
And together with that, I mean, is there a way to direct runoff away from the public alley? Any runoff from the carport water, rainwater, melt.
Almost like a small flashing.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I don't know the technical terms for it, but it just seemed to me a little something that would channel it. It might even be changing the pitch a little bit off to, lift it up just a little bit to nudge the water that way. I don't know whether that works or not. I'm not an engineer.
Snowboards.
Or if push comes to shove, the decorative trim that you apply to it, maybe that's what channels it off. Maybe, if we're going to get to the trim. But they have to do something. They have to do something to redirect the water away from the public alley, and they have to install trim in keeping with the architecture of the building to make it prettier. I don't know how shall we phrase that? Suggestions, Al?
Decorative trim.
Right, the revisions, yeah. The revision
subcommittee will look at the runoff.
The runoff, right. And to improve, and adding details to improve the appearance of it so that it doesn't look so industrial.
Yeah, we talked about having greenery.
There's a possibility, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we allow them to make a proposal and look at it. Maybe it's just trim, maybe it, I have this vision of the old pergola with hanging plants off of it. I don't know whether that's a good idea either. But we'll let them present a proposal and we'll go from there. What else, Art?
I saw more. The applicant will install concrete pads under both enclosures. The applicant will install a roof over the location where the four cans are located.
The rear of the trash.
Residential.
The rear of the trash
Right.
enclosure.
We'll look at the drainage off the carport into the public alley. I guess we've already covered that. And I'll include that.
And you also, I guess, the drainage from the stair bump out.
Any roof leaders that discharge into the alleyway or the parking lot will work with the board engineer to
redirect them
to a safe
zone or to the back, whichever will drain more appropriately to a basin.
Correct.
Sounds good.
Okay. The stacked parking will be for employees of the restaurant only. The limit is 8 degrees of tilt of the roof of the carport with the solar panels.
Art, are we limiting the stacked parking to a certain time?
Yes, the stacked parking will be clear by 4 o'clock p.m. That was my next one. I anticipated my next comment.
He'll regroup everything a little more logically than it's written down. He's just trust me, you will.
Employees there at 6:30.
So 6:30. 6:30 to 4. It's when the employees arrive. 6:30 to 4 p.m.
The applicant will address the downspout drains into the alleyways. That'll be addressed, and got that already. So here's the more complex one. Parking in the private alleyway may continue so long as the restaurant Bluestone operates. If there is a new owner, that would mean that a new application will need to be brought before the board with regard to the stacked parking.
Basically.
Pretty good.
Stacked parking only. Stacked parking, just with regard to that.
Right.
Everything else. Any obstruction that occurs in the public parking lot as the result of construction must achieve the permission of the township. If the alleyway is required to be closed off during construction. The applicant will comply with the township's requirements for both permitting to build and for construction.
Light shielding for under the carport and also for the alley.
There you go.
Are we going to reduce the width of the carport so it's even with the ends of the building? I know we talked about that. Eliminating 6 solar panels, adjusting the carport so it's even with the size of the building.
I mean, I could go either way on that. I'm happy that there's solar panels going up.
Yeah, I'm happy there's solar panels too. Right.
I don't like the way it necessarily looks from Watchung, but I personally am willing to be okay with it
Me
because
too.
I appreciate whether they're going to lop off the 6 or 9 panels, kind of over that private alleyway, solar panels. And I'm saying, me personally, I'm okay leaving them because I appreciate somebody installing solar panels, and I'm willing to. I would consider that a benefit over the detriment of the view shed of seeing a big piece of steel from Watchung, which I don't really like, but I'd rather have the panels personally.
But maybe we can also shield that a little bit with greenery or some decorative bit. I don't know.
We talked about, we've talked about that, putting something, blocking that one piece of steel that sticks out and be visible with planters or something.
Sounds good to me. I don't know if anybody else on the board has a...
I like that. I really appreciate that they're doing this solar thing. And not everybody dislikes looking at solar panels. I mean, I don't think they're pretty, but they're certainly progressive, and I'm glad that they're there.
So does the resolution say that the cantilever exists or not?
Well, that's what we're discussing,
Yeah.
whether or not it will say that. And Keith is saying that it doesn't make a difference one way or the other to him. You would...
Yeah. I think if you're willing to make it look nice from the Watchung Avenue side, then, I mean, that might be you're right, Ms. Willis, the best of both worlds.
That to me is the biggest problem of the whole project, is that carrying over towards beyond the edge of the building, and I think it's an eyesore. I think that I don't see how we want to build something and then try to camouflage it with plants. So, and I'm really surprised that the HPC approved that, because I always thought everything that you could see from the front of buildings in a historic district has to be historic, and this is not. And
What we said in there, put your mic. My mic. Where is it? They recommend the approval of site plan application. Freestanding carports constructed at the rear of the property is not attached to the existing building. Complies with the Secretary of Interior standards as the proposed addition to the site is located on the secondary elevation and not the primary facade.
Well,
So since this spans...
So be it, but
Since it spans
I
the
don't like
entire
it.
width of the alley, basically, what if you center mounted a nice light fixture on it?
What?
And that's what you saw when you looked down the alley, a nice,
Light
appropriate,
fixture?
you know.
It looked like some element with a hanging lamp.
like a
with a sconce
Yeah,
or something that would be on, that would light the alley. That's what you look, you know, and it would have to be something that would be appropriate for the age of the building, the historic, you know.
Well, I'd go the opposite. I'd say, why don't you just do some, if you could, commission or have someone who likes to do artwork, do something kind of funky piece of art that you could see from the sidewalk.
Could do that.
That would be interesting too.
Yeah, something. I mean, I'm sure they could work something out.
Yeah.
Me
personally, I would.
You see the words funky art in my resolution.
I mean, I'm happy with any of these options, personally.
Yeah, that's...
I agree. I think it should line up.
Not because it's historic, it's just, you have this thing sticking off.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
and I also don't believe you can't put 6 to 9 panels on the roof. I see a lot more space. I just don't believe it, so,
I agree. I mean, the structure is not very appealing to me. I think it's an eyesore, and to have it extend beyond the building makes it even more.
There's a space where the H, the building's like an H, right in the middle, there's nothing there, you stick them right in there. I mean, how come you can't put it in now? How come?
Because of between, it has a twin core with setbacks and everything else.
Here, take a picture.
I'm okay with it.
That's the HPC.
That's the company.
The parking committee is the Mickey Mouse.
So what is the thought of the board?
Well, it's I guess the consensus of what.
Carol, what do you think?
Well,
Leave it or
I
not?
go either way. I think it sounds like there are lots of different ideas. Sounds could be attractive, attractive. I don't really have a strong opinion. I don't really think my vote based on the fact that
There's always the revisions committee with the final aesthetics.
What's
Rather than tie it up here. I mean,
Frederick, what do you think?
I'm gonna be honest, looking back there, it's not like it's the most beautiful thing back, period.
well, we leave it up to
It's
the
not really
historic
gonna bother me that much.
commission to decide whether what sounds appropriate.
well, they
I think they already did.
Did.
They don't have a problem with
They
it.
didn't have a problem, they didn't really get into the aesthetics of it, they just commented on whether it fit the bill for the secretary's regulation, but I think we're dealing with both aesthetics, we've addressed the engineering issues. I think we're dealing with aesthetic concerns.
Yeah.
And so we can either, I'm not sure, based on the feedback here, that we're gonna come up with one solution tonight, and maybe Mr. Sionis wants to go back to the drawing board a little bit and come to the table. I think a smaller setting or some other, unless you want to make them come back here with a final aesthetic approach that would satisfy everybody. And for full committee, otherwise kick it to the smaller group and we'll.
So I'm just concerned about what it is that's getting care. I mean, if
Whether it's
if the revisions committee decides that they want to scale this pit, this back, this is more than a de minimis change, at least in my opinion.
No, no.
I think what I'm
Yeah.
hearing is that the consensus on this board is not to shorten the
Right.
carport. However, you want the look to go to the revisions committee, perhaps to hang a light, perhaps to do
Funky art.
Correct.
Yeah. Metal, some kind of metal work, art
Kind of
piece.
detailing.
Yeah.
Skirt or, I mean.
Oh, and just before we decide, I just couldn't
Yeah, I'm not so
see,
sure
would
how
lights
visible
be
it's
showing up the alley on the underside of that
Because that's what we're talking about, how visible.
overhang there? And I'm trying to just see in the plan.
I think your engineer made a suggestion that the back of the LED tape have a shield on it, and that would keep the light from shining up the alley.
And I think our engineer also said perhaps even the back of the
That's what I was
carport
thinking.
have a shield on it.
I would look
And it's useful.
Yeah, the whole back of the carport.
Right. You
I
don't know what,
understand what you're saying. Yeah,
like
I
it's
guess
a
you kind
lighting
of have to
feature.
see what the field produces, right? I mean, on that one, you
Well,
might not need
Well,
anything.
I
I think that was
calculate
definite
that.
And if you do a
because
nice
of,
feature,
it would
if you
shine
do a
into the
nice
apartments, because it's.
Oh, I thought it was a shield on the LED tape.
No, I think it's a shield on the back of the carport so you don't get a glow up into the second floor residential.
Right.
So the back line of this car.
All right, so I missed that.
I would look to match the height down from the back
So
of the
10.6?
carport to the height of the bottom of the sill on the
Okay.
second story windows.
Nice.
So that you even out at least looking parallel out and not necessarily down.
Very good.
To help with the glow.
Yeah.
Sound good, Mr. Sionis?
That's good.
Great.
We agree.
So come back to the smaller group, is that the consensus?
For the look of,
For the final
aesthetics
look
of it.
details?
Of the carport.
Right.
Mr. Owen, have you heard all the conditions?
Oh, yes.
Do you have any disagreement?
I just
And ideally with a
One
couple of
question.
options though, as Mr. Schwartz was saying, just when it comes back to the review committee, it's not just one kind of, but a couple of options of what could be done, because this really could be a serious eyesore from the street. So not just kind of one and done, but yeah.
Isn't it
You have
75
a
feet?
number of things that are going to the revisions committee, and that's one of them, so, yeah.
The chair's idea that it would just be a line of metal with a hanging light so that you really wouldn't focus on that. You'd focus on the light as an aesthetic detail. That was one good idea.
I thought that was one good idea too. I did.
Yeah.
I've been thinking of ideas and I didn't think of that.
It would look like the end of an alley with a light.
I think so.
You know?
For the benefit of that review committee, just be mindful of the height that you're going to set that light at and the height of the second-story windows in the neighboring.
Right. It would have to be shielded.
With the neighboring
It would have to
building.
be shielded.
Because that height is likely going to be higher than the proposed wall mount in the alleyway.
Well, can we also put that in the resolution that the board engineer will be part of that discussion?
Absolutely.
Good. I would appreciate that.
Harvey has a question.
You come to the development review committee. You don't come to the revisions stuff, do you?
No.
Not yet, but I'm
But I think I want to ask.
It's
always
about to.
available.
I think we,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Definitely.
The snow things.
Mr. Schilling, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, as far as the snow coming off, the snow guards, because of the angle that these are on, snow really can't fall off them. And I would only say that, if any of you have ever been to William Patterson, they've got their entire parking lot is covered with these carports, Paramus Park, they're all over. In Canada, I've seen them all over. I've never seen snow guards on them because I don't think snow can fall off these because of the angle that they're on.
I tend to agree with that. I've seen a lot of these installations. I haven't seen not that I was.
So can we eliminate the snow guards from the 25 conditions?
Not the snow guard,
Easy, there's only 22.
but the water runoff. There was still a condition.
Well, if the snow comes off, he's going to clean it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, there was
Well, we still
water
wanna do-
runoff
we
on the
s-
side.
We still need to direct the
But
water.
not about
and
the
then
water
water
being
about the water
directed
with
to
your
come off
engineer.
of one, because you're saying the panels, to have the panels, the water come off one side, or have a gutter.
Try to control the direction.
Yeah, I don't.
On a slight angle.
I'm not sure if
It
we
was mentioned
agreed on
in
that.
passive voice, because I don't know who mentioned it. That the water would run, you were saying when the water
It was
comes
to
run
around,
away from
it
the-
should run away,
From the alley.
either with a gutter or some sort of flashing at the bottom.
Right, right.
So that
And that's
will
what I was
still
saying, that
remain.
maybe that might even be something we could integrate into the trim that will be put around.
But that would still remain as a condition,
As a
even though we're
condition,
doing
yes.
away with the snow.
So as shown on the plans, the existing condition is rain falls over the parking area and drains outward towards our municipal lot.
Right.
As proposed, it would sheet flow evenly off of the carport in the same direction and continue in that same direction. So it's
not gonna go-
maintaining the existing drainage pattern. I wouldn't foresee much, if any, spillover to the east and west sides towards the public or private alley. It's just naturally by the elevation and the way it's pitched. You could put minimal flashing guards along those sides just to assure that it doesn't spill over, particularly on the public side.
Right.
And to kind of keep it encapsulated. Again, we could discuss that in the aesthetics in the final selection of the carport.
I mean,
That sounds like a practical way to do it.
Yeah, and I'd be okay without snow guards, with a kind of provision, and that maybe this doesn't even need to go in a resolution, but, if it becomes a public safety issue, something needs to be done. But I don't know if that has to be a resolution. I feel like that's a matter of general course.
Along with the condition, I think, of cleanup of the snow that
Yes.
should fall into the municipal area.
Yep.
The same would be for cleanup of snow and de-icing of the area of the public alleyway and the municipal
lot.
parking lot alley.
Anyone who walks around there, the problem is the runoff in front sidewalks.
Yes.
It's those things, that's what you worry about. Everything else,
That's,
Right.
yeah,
those things back up.
that's the most challenging.
And that's where the neighborhood association,
There were,
that would make it a lot less to walk around.
there was one recommendation from the HPC to clean and repair and repaint the front and rear facades.
Yes, we agree.
Yeah, just make sure that it's in there.
So I have a question for,
The resolution that Mr. Schilling is going to be out there with a snow shovel?
Let's say the applicant.
Or a snow blower, or both.
Do you have workers' comp?
so I have a question for our engineer.
Yes.
So do you have any concerns about the new exhaust thing being noisy?
No, I mean,
Oh, it's
they'll be industry standard.
So are there different levels of noise and the different ones you can install? So that we would want to say we'd like the least noisy one installed?
It's going to be a return air, right? It's going to be return air.
So it's not noisy.
A fresh air intake with a fan
Assume
on
I
it.
know it.
It's still powered, though.
They're going to be rated for a commercial use in adjacent residential decibel areas. Yeah.
Did we say that we were going to paint employees only, or have a sign for employees only on the stacked parking alley?
Do it, you know.
Is that something that we
We'd
would
rather have
typically?
less signs, but.
I don't know if you really need signs there.
I would leave it to them, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's clear in the resolution, I think. There are
There's a sign
conditions
up
that
there
it's
now that
employees
says
only.
tenant
I wouldn't want to
parking
park
only.
up in that alley. I wouldn't want my car blocked.
There's a sign up there now that says tenant.
Do we have any other
Several
conditions?
signs.
So I'll second the motion with the conditions.
Okay, I think I'll call the roll.
All right.
Chair Wynn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Prodow?
Yes.
Yes?
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Counselor Schlager?
I'm going to recuse myself.
Ms. Willis?
Abstain.
You said yes, right? Carol?
Yes, it is.
That's what I thought. Mr. Rooney?
Yes.
Mr. Ian Wally?
Yes.
Ms. Loughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Aye. Yes.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
He voted yes.
He voted. He voted. Aye. Yes. But she took everybody's vote. But you only need. You didn't.
Do we want to take a break, or do we want to?
I was surprised because there are 9 people.
Because
It's the first time there are 9 people.
Do we have time?
Can we address the ordinance at the June 10th meeting?
You have to have your report by June 21st. I do know the council wants to adopt this ordinance as soon as possible. Right now, we're operating under a monthly moratorium.
Right.
But you do have until June 21st.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
I have a question, so,
Right
Yes.
now, I have, June 10th. We've got 2 applications that evening. I think it's down to 3.
Can we address this at the beginning, not the end?
Or we just reserve time at the end.
All right.
Yeah, we
specific
will reserve time at the end.
We'll probably need a good hour and a half.
Well, you know,
This means that you kick the applicants out, so we have a fixed time to start, what does that mean?
yeah, you have to.
Yes.
say the
So you say we do this at 10 o'clock?
Yes.
9:30.
9:30.
What he said. All right.
That's the only way. You had to make you had to finalize the recommendation on that meeting.
Yeah.
May I ask one question?
Sure.
On that? The purple areas on the map, the areas that come from the 2016 Historic Preservation Act.
Right.
When you come to the meeting, can you just give us some insight as to how legal they, what, in what form they exist? We know historic, structures exist, they're codified. That's just a question. Potential areas, all the purple areas on the map would be more than areas.
Well, this, one of the issues, what is happening is the expansion of the properties that were originally listed under the, what's it called from the Junior League?
The inventory of historic resources?
When they-
The historic resources inventory.
Yeah, the inventory, which had not been designated as historic properties, but were on a list, and now, as part of this, are supposed to be considered kind of light historic for the purpose of demolition, right?
Well,
Complete
these are those
demolition.
particular homes. What I'm talking about, there's pretty large purple areas.
Oh,
on
the
map.
districts, the districts.
Yeah, big districts. There's a state and federal, there's the local historic, state and federal, and the big purple areas.
And then there are proposed new districts, correct. What this does is it's essentially what we talked about. It's historic preservation light, and it only creates a process in which if somebody was coming in for total demolition of their house, not partial demolition, total demolition, it throws it to the HPC for review.
Red tape. I apologize. I don't mean to. I will have a lot of questions about what these purple districts are.
Good night, and thank you.
That's what my question is. I know the historic classifications have been.
I'll get it tomorrow. Okay. That's what I'm trying to say.
But they were made historic by ordinance. I just don't know the legality.
We're just saying the framework. The districts are not at issue. That's fine if you want to know about. The districts are not at issue. It's the properties that are now considered historic or historic enough to prevent total demolition. They're not. All the properties are not being considered locally designated historic properties.
I understand. But
I think this
properties in that zone are subject to the red tape.
Right, but not all those
My
properties.
house, which was built 11 years ago, is subject to red tape if I want to make an alteration to it.
No. Only if it's total demolition.
No. Well,
Yes, it's only.
July on page 2.
Well, this is.
Including getting improvement by addition, alteration, or replacement. Certificate of appropriateness by the commission.
No. The demolition, and we could talk about the.
Let's say, I think this is something we could handle at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Ianwala, your question was just like, what does the light purple mean? You know, and so I think we can be prepared to discuss that at the next meeting.
And just so you know, you're not designated. It only if you're going in for total demolition, that's when this ordinance takes effect. Not if you're just demolishing a part of your house. Not if you're putting an addition on. It's only if you're going to demolish your house. Seriously, you and I could talk offline about that. If you look under the definition, just so that you know.
It's very hard to follow the ordinance. It's not easily.
Yes.
It's not easy to follow.
If you look on page 5, it affects total. I didn't be on page 5, just so you know. Total demolition and totally demolished. That's what this ordinance applies to. Shall mean for purposes of this section the raising, dismantling, or destruction of substantially all of any building. So it's not just an addition. It's not a change to your house. You've not been designated a historic site. It only applies if it's a total demolition.
Well, that's counter to page 2, 1A little line. We can talk about it.
There's some language.
Yeah, it's not clear.
There's some language drafting conflicts and convolutions.
Right. And I think page 2 has to do with a separate section of the ordinance where when certificates of appropriateness apply, and that only affects properties that are already designated.
That's good. That needs to be explained to us.
It's not clear from the way it's written. Very confusing. Unnecessary complications.
So do we have any committee reports? Bills?
Let's see, the redevelopment subcommittee met last week to discuss the Haynes redevelopment plan with the Economic Development Committee. I thought it was a very fruitful meeting, and I think they came to the same agreement in terms of the direction that the Haynes redevelopment plan is going. So we're working to amend the plan to a direction with more open space. And the zoning subcommittee meets tomorrow night.
We have lots of things that we're looking at the zoning subcommittee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. It's talk about confusing. Rather than doing everything as we did in one comprehensive book, we now have to prioritize and do it little by little.
Wow.
Okay. So it's
7 o'clock?
It's like baby steps to change the zoning ordinance. All right, that's it.
Bills?
Bills, one question, the BD Padovano April 30th, 2019 invoice. I thought we were going to get charged $450 per meeting, and it looks like it's more of a time and expenses invoice.
Which one is that, Keith? What's your
It's April 30th, 2019. It's page 7 of the PDF packet.
for his firm?
B.D. Padovano, yeah,
Oh.
for Mr. Neese's firm.
Okay, page 7, so let's see. 1, 2, 3. That's the per meeting fee? Must be this, the $826.20?
Correct. I thought it was going to be a flat $450 per meeting.
Yeah, I think it's the,
10 meeting, attend meeting, no charge for...
so $450, but it's
I don't know
$800.
him. I think
And then you charge for tolls.
Dan Steinhagen did,
Yeah.
right? I generally don't do that.
Right.
All right, so I'll revise that bill.
Frankly, it gives you an extra couple bucks. I mean,
It
just should be accurate as to its flat fee.
I
And
don't know how that
I know.
happened, but I'll take
it got
care of
coded wrong in the system as time and expenses instead of flat fee.
Oh, my
That's-
God.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, in fact.
So I have a question about bills, just given that we had to go through 7 drafts to get a resolution in Lackawanna Plaza, is that bill being discounted at all? And a lot of the changes were coming from this group rather than, you know.
I haven't seen anybody apply discounts to their invoices, but did they
Is that
not bill us
something we
for
would
all of their
consider?
time?
Just-
No, that comes out of the escrow.
It comes out, we're not paying that.
Oh, yeah, the township
No,
doesn't pay that.
We don't pay it.
Oh,
The only thing that the township...
Basically, the developer's been paying for that out of the
Right.
escrow.
The only thing the township's actually paid for was responding to the lawsuit that was filed by Mr. Hain.
Right.
So I guess so.